Let me go ahead and call to order the March 17th, St. Patrick's Day meeting of the Delta Protection Commission 2022. And certainly want to welcome fellow commissioners, our staff, and all members of the public who are with us this afternoon and this evening. And so after calling to order, I guess I would I'm going to ask Commissioner Fuller if he would be so glad to, or happy to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would, George.
With pleasure.
Okay, I think we're getting a flag up on the screen there for everybody. So, and
Okay.
go right ahead whenever you're ready there, George.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with justice and liberty for all.
Thank you, George. Appreciate you leading us off today. Okay, as we get started then, I want to just read into the record a brief announcement. As authorized by Government Code Section 11133, we're meeting today remotely via Zoom. Members of the public can also join by telephone by calling the 1-888-363-4734 number and then entering the conference code 425546. This information is located on the top of the meeting agenda, and all the meeting materials are located for those who may not know, at www.delta.ca.gov. For public comment, please use the raise hand. It was noted, I think, on the material just was on the screen. Use the raise hand feature on Zoom. If you're joining by telephone, press the number 2 to indicate you would like to make a public comment. If you press number 2 again, you will remove your raised hand. We'll do our best to recognize you as we go along. And if for some reason the chair, me, it doesn't acknowledge you, just chime in, please do. So again, thank you everyone for joining and for attending this meeting via Zoom. In all likelihood, we may be back in session in person next meeting. So this may be the end of quite a long number of meetings with the commission have been done via Zoom, but certainly that has allowed us to conduct our business. So with that, we'll go ahead and ask our newly designated and appointed commission clerk, Morgan Matz, to call the roll. So Morgan, welcome, and I'll let you do the official duties and establish our quorum, please.
Chair Nottoli, I appreciate that.
Good.
Chair Nottoli.
Here.
Vice Chair Wynn. Commissioner Villegas.
Present.
Commissioner Burgess. Commissioner Burgess. Commissioner Vasquez.
Here.
Commissioner Fuller.
Here.
Commissioner Nakanishi. Commissioner Nakanishi. Commissioner Paroli.
Here.
Commissioner Slater.
Here.
Commissioner Agar.
Here.
Commissioner Eddy.
Present.
Commissioner Bush.
Here.
Alternate for ex officio Senator Eggman, Liliana Udang.
Here.
Alternate for ex officio Assembly Member Via Padua, Israel Landa. Israel Landa. And we received word that Commissioner Steele and Commissioner Musi will be absent. We have 9 members present and an established quorum.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Morgan. And again, I know that Commissioner Vogel will be joining us a little later in the meeting, and I believe Commissioner Bush will have to leave around 5 p.m. So again, thanks for all for your attendance and participation. And we want to certainly welcome our new ex officio member, Assembly Member Carlos Villa Pudua, and certainly his staff member, Israel Landa, who will be joining us, I trust, shortly. Also, I just want to call out and note too that this is, he led us in the Pledge of Allegiance so ably today, but Commissioner Fuller's, I believe, will be concluding his term representing the city of Contra Costa and Solano counties before our next meeting. And not to interrupt the flow of the meeting, but I don't know, George, you want to say anything, or we can certainly reserve it at the end, but we appreciated certainly your service with the commission and your attention to the many matters that have come before us and your contributions. And so I just wanted to express the thanks. I'm, through the chair here, but really enjoyed working with you. And again, unless there's a special meeting, though, our next meeting will be, as we know, later in the agenda in May. So it'll be will be after your term concludes, as I understand it. So, George, you want to say anything?
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and it's been an eye opener. It's my first time out on the Delta, and or at least working out here on the Delta, and it's been an eye opener, and I really appreciate it, and I wish you the best.
Great.
Continue on.
Great. Thanks again, George. Appreciate it. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm
yes.
sorry for interrupting, but I do believe that Commissioner Nakanishi has joined the meeting. Is that you, Commissioner Nakanishi, on the phone number? Well, I might have spoken too soon. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Nakanishi.
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
Thank you.
So Morgan, let's recognize Commissioner Nakanishi as present at roll call as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Nakanishi marked down as present.
Okay. Thanks, Morgan.
Oh,
Welcome, man.
and I believe Vice Chair Wynn has joined. Maybe either the chair or the clerk can ask if there are any other commission members that have since joined since the roll call.
Okay, good. So again, welcome, Alan and Chuck. If you're with us, acknowledge, and if anybody else has joined us, let us know too. We just get started here with some announcements.
I am, thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks, Chuck. Noted as being present. Anyone else? All right. Okay, then with that, we'll move down our agenda then to the next item, and that's our opportunity for public comment. And this is an opportunity for any member of the public to address a commission regarding items which are not on the agenda, and an opportunity to make comments as they choose. So do we have anyone on the line, anyone with a raised hand who would like to offer comments for items not on the agenda? Morgan or Eric?
I see no raised hands at the moment.
Okay. All right. If there's no one wishes to address the question on matters not on the agenda, we'll move on down to item number 4, which is a brief report on Delta Stewardship Council activities. I just note that the Stewardship Council, since we last met as a commission, met on both January 27th and February 24th, and we'll meet again next Thursday. And I think certainly an item that will appear on our commission agenda, I will excuse myself, but will be a topic for the commission to discuss later in the agenda. It will be a matter before the Stewardship Council. One of the appeals will be before us next week. We'll just note, though, that there's continuing work on a number of different fronts as it relates to work both with the Independent Science Board and change. I think some proposed changes to some of the procedures for Stewardship Council matters, and those will be coming forward in the ensuing next couple of months. I would just note too, it may be well known, but the immediate past chair, Susan Tatayan, stepped down after having served as the council chair for several years, and a new appointment, Audrey Lee, was appointed and will be seated at the next council meeting next week, as I pointed out. So And also that Councilmember Damrell, who served on the council for a better part of a decade, if not more, was reappointed as well. So there is a full membership on the council for the work that lies ahead. So unless there's any specific questions, I didn't, again, the agendas have been relatively light. I think in the next a few months, though, there'll be items again. I'll probably have a more detailed report for commission members as we go through the spring and summer with some of the scheduled reports and our actions coming for the council. So that's all I had, unless anybody had any question. All right, seeing none, then we'll move to item 5, which is an opportunity for commissioners early in the agenda to make any comments or announcements they'd like to, and we certainly can, touch base back for something more appropriate towards the end of the agenda. But this is an opportunity. So and I do see a hand, Commissioner Agar. Very good. You always have a good report for us. So yeah, turn to Dennis and anyone else. Certainly raise your hand as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just have some quick updates. First, I'd like to apologize not getting it to Erik Vink earlier, but I did send out the latest Delta map of all our construction projects. Now that we're coming up to construction season, we want to make sure we have the latest and accurate information for all of you. So that was sent to Erik earlier today, and I'm not sure if he had a chance to send it out to the members, but definitely I wanted to update everybody that we do have that map. Just some other leadership changes that you may all be aware of, but in case you didn't, we have a new secretary for California State Transportation Agency. That's our Tokes Omishakin. He was just newly appointed and started his new job as of earlier this month, March 1st. He was appointed by the governor. I'm not sure, Erik, does that mean I get a new delegation from Secretary Omishakin? But I'm assuming I will. Yes.
My understanding is that it would remain in effect unless it's lifted, but
okay.
I'll reach out to the secretary's office just to confirm that. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then that means that we have a vacant position for our director for Caltrans, because he came from Caltrans as our director. And we have an interim director for Caltrans. His name is Stephen Keck. That's K-E-C-K. And he's he's coming within Caltrans as the chief financial officer for the department. So he'll be there until we can get a newly appointed director for Caltrans. So looking forward to seeing who my new boss is going to be here in the next few months. And I know that we do have a Clean California agenda item later, so I'll save my comments on that when that agenda comes up. That's all I have to report, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Commissioner Agar, and certainly extend our congratulations to Tokes for his appointment. I know that he certainly, in his leadership role with Caltrans, was very engaged, and and obviously had a great support network through the regional directors, yourself included, district directors, and so we certainly wish him well, and trust you'll get a new appointment at some point in time. But again, congratulations to Tokes.
All right. Will do, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioner have any other comments or reports at this juncture in the meeting? Don't see any. Okay, Morgan, you don't see any? Or Erik, I don't see any hands. So anybody on the phone?
I see no comment.
Okay, very good. Okay, all right. Then we'll move into our consent agenda, which is item number 6, which is consideration of the approval of the January 20th, 2022 meeting minutes. Those were distributed in the agenda. And so I would first turn to commissioners to see if you have any amendments or corrections to the minutes. All right. We have any public comment, Morgan, Erik?
I see no hands raised at the moment.
All right, then if there's no additions or corrections, I would entertain a motion.
So move Villegas.
Second, Fuller.
Moved by Villegas, seconded by Fuller to Approve consent item number 6. The minutes of the January 20th meeting. Then if there's no further comments or questions, I turn to Morgan. Please call roll.
Chair Nottoli,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nguyen,
Yes.
Commissioner Villegas,
Aye.
Commissioner Vasquez,
Yes.
Commissioner Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Nakanishi,
Aye.
Commissioner Paroli,
Aye.
Commissioner Slater, Commissioner Slater. I'll come back. Commissioner Agar,
Yes.
Commissioner Birdsong. I'm sorry, Josh Eddy,
Aye.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
okay, we have 10 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions.
Very good. Thank you, Morgan. Motion passes. Then we'll move into regular agenda then. Next item 7, Executive Director's Report. Eric, turn to you.
Great. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commission members. I have a very short report. Delta Conveyance. We keep hearing that the EIR will be out in mid-2022. We did meet just yesterday with county representatives regarding the Section 106 National Historic Preservation Act process that's being undertaken by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Moving on to broadband, I'm sorry to report that we were not successful with the grant submittal centered around the community of Isleton, but serving other parts of the Delta. Heavy competition for that national grant program and very large grants. Ours was a relatively small one by comparison. We will keep trying. There will be other grant opportunities and we'll be there to submit when they are available. On the staffing, I want to report we have a new retired annuitant joining us. Her name is Debbie Spencer. She'll be working on the Clean California grant and assisting us in a few other areas. She's a staff services analyst and we welcome her aboard. There are no land use comment letters that have been sent by the commission in since our last meeting. And a more detailed projects update and spending update is included in my written report and in addition to upcoming Delta events. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Eric. Commission members, any comments or questions regarding the report? Eric? All right. None. Any comments from the public? Any hands raised? Morgan or Eric?
I see no hands raised right now.
Very good. Thank you, Eric. Then we'll move down to our DPAC report, and I believe it's going to be covered by our chairperson, Mariah Looney, and Erik Vink as well. There's a couple of items I think may be slated for action by the commission in a moment. So go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if DPAC Chair Mariah Looney joined the meeting. Mariah, if you're there, we'll give you a chance to jump in. On her behalf, commission members, let me report that the DPAC, the Delta Protection Advisory Committee, met on March 1st. It was a Zoom meeting. DPAC did receive a resignation, or I should say the commission did receive a resignation notice from DeWitt Zalecki, who was representing one of the habitat and non-governmental organization seats on DPAC. The committee received a report on the Delta Drought Response Pilot Program and commission staff activities. It was a pretty short meeting. No other items to report from the DPAC's meeting on March 1st. But if I could segue into a couple of items that I would like to bring to the commission and ask for the commission's approval on. The first has to do with making some amendments to the DPAC Charter. The charter has been in effect since our most current incarnation of the DPAC, going back to, it's right here in the document that I don't have in front of me, going back to 2014. These proposed changes dated March 17th are first to move one of the habitat and conservation non-governmental organization slots to a slot representing a Delta cultural preservation representative. And the thinking behind that is that with the National Heritage Area coming online, Delta cultural preservation entities are taking on an enhanced role within the work of the commission, and it would be appropriate to include them as a voting member of the advisory committee. It's also worth noting that there currently is a ex officio seat for a Delta cultural preservation representative. It's currently filled by Douglas Shaw of the Locke Foundation. And so the second part of my request here will involve making a formal appointment of Douglas as a voting member, assuming that the commission is okay with that change in the charter that would create a new voting spot for a Delta cultural preservation representative. The only other change in the charter has to do with cleaning up the description of the appointments to the committee, which our goal going back 2 years ago was to have a committee with staggered membership so that every year in May, 5 of the 15 voting members would be up for appointment, or in the case of people in that position, potentially reappointment by your commission. And that way we would move away from a problem we had earlier where everyone was kind of on the same schedule and we were filling seats on the committee almost in one fell swoop. This way we have a chance annually to add new members or to continue the service of existing members. So that's a proposed change, is just to clean up that language. No other change, but just it was worded the way it currently exists when we made this switch over to try to put people on staggered terms. And now that we've pretty much gotten everyone on a good staggered term schedule, it's just simply stating annually which seats would be up for appointment in rotation. That probably could have been stated so much better and clearer than what I just did, but I'll do my best to be a little more succinct. And then the final change just has to do with a provision that says that the chair of the committee has to confirm the advisory committee's selection of a chair. We kind of do that informally because the chair is always great about welcoming the new chair of the advisory committee, but it leaves the impression that somehow it's up to the chair of the Delta Protection Commission to determine who should chair the advisory committee. And of course, I'm sure the commission feels that should be a decision of the advisory committee, and that's how they currently handle it. So those are the proposed changes to the charter. They're presented in the meeting packet in both a red line format and a clean version. The second action that I'm requesting from the committee is to appoint 2 members as voting members of the Delta Protection Advisory Committee. The first is Aaron Chappell, who's the regional manager, the Bay Delta regional manager for California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Cal Fish and Wildlife has always been one of our state agency representatives on the DPAC. They were ably represented for many years by Jim Starr, who I'm also very sad to report passed away recently. Jim was just a fantastic DPAC member, but more importantly, just a fantastic person. And we've been missing him on DPAC since his retirement from the department. And of course, we all send our best wishes to his family and loved ones over his passing. So Aaron Chappelle is proposed to fill that spot. It would run until May of 2024. The second change, assuming that the committee is okay with the changes in the charter, is to appoint Douglas Shaw as the Delta Cultural Preservation representative to the DPAC. That would be a voting member. Douglas is currently an ex officio member on the committee. He was selected through that open process that we conducted 2 years ago and was formally brought before the commission for appointment as an ex officio. This would just elevate him to a voting member. And his term would run until May 2024 as well. So, Mr. Chair, unless there's an objection to handling both of these items in a single motion, or if there are commission members who are supportive of one but not supportive of the other, I would just recommend that the motion be both to approve the proposed changes in the DPAC Charter dated March 17th, 2022, and to appoint Aaron Chappelle as a state agency representative and Douglas Shaw as a Delta Cultural Preservation representative to DPAC for terms ending in May 2024.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Eric, and appreciate the presentation. Let me turn to commission members. Are there questions or anything related to the recommendation as to how we would handle this concurrently? If there is any objection to that, we can do separate motions if that's the pleasure of the commission. But any questions of Mr. Vink? Let's see any hands. Okay. Let me go then to members of the public. Do we have any member of the public that wishes to address this matter?
I currently see no hands raised.
Okay. All right. Well, we welcome public comment, but if no one's so inclined, then we would bring it back to the commission then. You've heard the recommendation. Unless there's any other comments or suggestions, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move the item as recommended.
Okay.
Fuller, second.
Okay. Motion by Bush, second by Fuller to approve the recommendation and take these concurrently as outlined in the executive director's recommendation. And so if there's nothing further, I'd go to Morgan. Please call the roll.
Chair Nottoli,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nguyen,
Yes.
Commissioner Villegas.
Yes.
We are expecting Commissioner Burgess to join the call. I don't see her at the moment, but Commissioner Villegas or Commissioner Burgess. Commissioner Vasquez,
Yes.
Commissioner Fuller,
Yes.
Commissioner Nakanishi, Commissioner Nakanishi.
He's on his phone and muted at the moment.
Okay, I'll come back. Commissioner Paroli,
Yes.
Commissioner Slater,
Yes.
Commissioner Agar,
Yes.
Commissioner Eddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
and Commissioner Nakanishi. Okay. So
I can
once
hold the
again-
vote open for a moment. Maybe somebody, there's another way to communicate with them, know that called for the vote. So Alan, we were calling for a vote if you're,
Nakanishi, yes.
okay, very good. Thanks, Alan. Good. Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. That'll bring us to 11 yes votes and 0 no votes and 0 abstentions.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you, Morgan. Thank you, commissioners. All right, then let's move to our next item on the agenda, which is the report on the 2022 drought in the Delta. And we have some very distinguished panel members this evening. And I know we have some presentations that I think we'll all find very topical and current. So Eric, did you want to introduce this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like to welcome our Delta Watermaster, Michael George. And Michael has a tradition of joining us on St. Patrick's Day, so we thank him for again joining our meeting on this special day for him. Campbell Ingram, Executive Officer for the Delta Conservancy. And then to provide a perspective from the Delta Water Agencies, or at least one Delta Water Agency, Dante Nomellini Sr. from Central Delta Water Agency. And we've asked Delta Watermaster Michael George to start, give kind of an overview of a whole suite of activities that are occurring and potentially affecting the Delta. Campbell to speak specifically on the Delta Drought Response Pilot Program, and Dante Nomellini to provide perspective from a Delta Regional Water Agency.
Great, thanks, Eric. Welcome, Michael, Campbell, and Dante. And Michael, I guess you could kick it off since it's St. Patrick's Day. You get to go first. So.
Okay, well, happy St. Patrick's Day to you all. It's a pleasure to be here as always. Although usually when I come before you, I'm giving you a kind of summary of activities of the Office of Delta Watermaster, whereas this time we're focused on kind of the most significant and immediate set of issues that we're facing. That, of course, being the painful one of the persistent drought. So I'm going to give a short background and then focus on what I perceive to be the impacts directly on the Delta. Next slide, please. So it's no surprise to anybody that the statewide drought is persisting. The atmospheric rivers we got at the end of October and then another one at the end of December and early January, which set us up well for the water year, were just not enough. And things turned dry in January and they've remained dry through today. So next slide, please. This is just the statewide drought monitor, and it indicates what we are all perceiving, and that is that most of the state is either in severe or extreme drought. Next slide, please. And to compound the problem, our reservoirs are not in great shape. In fact, that's an understatement. The slide here is as of March 7th. And in fact, because the irrigation season has started, outflow is increasing faster than inflow. Normally at this time of the year, we start to see snow melt refresh some of these reservoirs. And that's just not happening yet. We are clearly heading into the irrigation season with dry conditions, with further desiccation of our meager snowpack, meaning that it's evaporating into the air or soaking into the earth, not running into our reservoirs. And so next slide, please. I think we should all expect and do expect that the statewide drought response is likely to be extended. I think it is possible, maybe unavoidable, that the governor is likely to have to extend his proclamation of a drought emergency. If that happens, as I expect, I would think that that proclamation is likely also to extend the authority of the State Water Resources Control Board to enact emergency regulations, as they did last August. Now, those emergency regulations have a 180-day life, so that unless extended, though the Delta watershed emergency regulations, which became effective on August 20th, would expire in August of 2022. However, with extended emergency regulation authority, which I think we should expect based on conditions, I think it is more likely the State Water Board will tweak some of those emergency regulations and extend them. And that means that we should expect throughout the current water year through September of 2022 to be under those emergency regulations. Next slide, please. But it's important as we think about the extension of that drought response to look at what's different, what progress has been made. And from my perspective, one of the most important things that's happened is that the Division of Water Rights has very systematically and significantly refined the methodology that it uses to trigger curtailment of water rights throughout the Delta watershed. That's been the result of extensive outreach and extensive input to refining that methodology among and with the water community. And that's a long way from saying that the division or the state board or the Austin Delta Watermaster thinks it's perfect. It's getting much better, and it's much finer scale, and it's all transparent. And we've had a great deal of both public input and expert input on it as well. As I think most of you know, as a result of the impact of those emergency regulations and the methodology, we currently have some modest curtailments in the Delta watershed. Right now in the legal Delta itself, those curtailments extend only to curtailments of water rights of the projects. And that's because under the methodology, the projects are viewed as the junior appropriators. So we're starting to see those curtailments begin to cut in to the extent of diversions that are currently allowed in the Delta. But I think it would be wise for us all to believe, as happened at the end of last year, that virtually all licenses throughout the Delta watershed are likely to be curtailed at some point during the current or the upcoming irrigation season. That was only 11 days last year because the curtailments for licenses didn't cut in till late, and then they were taken off because we got out of the irrigation season in September. But I think we're going to see that again, and one of the things that means in terms of what's going on in the Delta, I think people are recognizing that any annual crops that are planted, which are dependent on licenses to be completed, are probably not a good investment, just because those licenses are likely to be curtailed under the methodology, given the dryness of the climate. I think it is also likely that some pre-14 appropriations are also going to get curtailed by priority, which means that they will extend deeper as the shortages are reflected in the methodology. Again, assuming drought conditions persist. And when I put together this slide and delivered it to Erik a week or so ago, my last bullet point was that we should expect the potential for there to be petitions for relief from environmental requirements, so-called temporary urgency change petitions. Well, since this slide, on Tuesday at the Water Board meeting, the directors of the Mid-Pacific region representing the Central Valley Project and of the Department of Water Resources representing the State Water Project indicated that they are preparing a temporary urgency change petition, which they hope will go into effect as of April 1st. And that will be submitted to the State Board tomorrow. So we are seeing the tightening of this drought vice throughout the Delta watershed. Well, let's move to the next slide and recognize that drought is experienced differently within the legal Delta. It's not a question of physical shortage of water. Rather, it's a threat to the quality of that water. And that threat essentially is the threat of salinity coming in through the ocean, San Francisco Bay, through Carquinez Straits, and impacting water quality within the Delta. Because that water quality depends essentially on net freshwater flows to keep that salinity at bay. No pun intended. This year, we've got, as I've said, seriously depleted reservoirs. And it seems as though we should anticipate the risk that those reservoirs are going to be so stressed that there may be trade-offs among the uses of the stored water in the project reservoirs. And so these next 4 issues are not necessarily in priority order, but we expect those reservoirs to capture water in the winter and to be able to provide services and benefits to all of us during the drier irrigation season, to protect water quality, to provide cold water to support salmonid species and other endangered species, obviously to protect human health and safety, to protect the infrastructure on which the entire state and its economy depends, and to meet the contract demands that are the source of funding for the projects themselves. Now, I do want to say that there have been a couple of important recent developments, since I put these slides together. One is that just last Friday, the United States District Court for the Eastern District of California entered an order in a piece of litigation between the state and federal government about how the project should be operated under extraordinarily dry conditions. Without going into the details of a 122-page order last Friday, the judge essentially authorized the projects to operate in conformance with what's called an interim operations plan for the rest of this water year through September 30th, and described in that plan a priority of water use. And again, I'm not going to go into detail, but as an oversimplification, first water use is for human uses. Second is for protection of water quality, and then for deliveries to contractors in their order. And importantly, after that decision came down on Friday, just last Tuesday, the directors offered some additional clarification, indicating that in terms of protecting human health, the projects are planning to operate under the interim operations plan, not only to provide 55 gallons per person per day minimum supply for drinking, cooking, bathing, and direct human use, but also to protect the environment, and subsumed in that human health, safety, and protection would be protecting salinity in the Delta. I read that nuance into Director Nema's report as positive in terms of understanding at the senior levels of operations of the projects this point that the Delta experiences drought differently, and that it is critical to all of California that we maintain a freshwater Delta. Now, let's, on my next slide, and I promise this is the last slide, there are other specific complexities that we are dealing with in the Delta. And the first one, and you've heard me talk about this before, but it's always important to keep in mind that the way shortage in our resource is allocated is not only different between the riparian and the appropriative system, it's inconsistent between the riparian and the appropriation system. For 100 and more years, that hasn't mattered much. And in most of the Delta watershed, it doesn't matter much today. But in the Delta, it matters a great deal. The most prevalent water rights in the Delta are riparian water rights, and they are cheek by jowl, physically and in time and in priority with appropriation rights. And the way shortage is allocated is inconsistent between those two systems. So it dramatically complicates the way we manage shortage within the Delta. That's different than the way we have to manage it throughout the rest of the state, throughout the rest of the watershed. Secondly, I said here, salinity barriers may be required and expanded. It's now clear that the salinity barrier at West Falls River not only was not taken out this year as was originally anticipated, it was just notched. And that notch is going to get filled in starting in April. So we will have a salinity barrier in the Delta earlier than we've ever had it, and working to prevent that salinity intrusion, which is the risk to the heart of the Delta. It's also important to know that there are other barriers that are going to be put in the southern part of the Delta. These barriers are principally to manage water levels, to make water available at the diversion structures of agricultural water users in the southern part of the Delta. It also has the effect of sequestering salt deeper in the South Delta and allowing the projects to draw more fresh water from the Sacramento part of the Delta pool. And even though those barriers in the South Delta are primarily for water level, they do have a significant impact on water quality. It's more localized, but it's important to keep in mind. And from my perspective as Delta Watermaster, that's something I'm gonna be watching like a hawk all summer. But the other thing that I think is important to remember as we go into what is going to be an excruciatingly difficult season, and that excruciating difficulty is going to be most acutely felt in the ag sector and most acutely felt in the San Joaquin Valley part of the ag sector. But as we head into this, it's important to keep in mind the next point, that we need to keep improving our water use reporting so that we've got more accurate, more credible, more timely data on which to make these critical, not just money, but health and safety decisions that are thrust upon us by the long, extended, and difficult drought. And so we are continuing to apply the new satellite imagery and new data management technologies to get that information faster, to turn it around, to make it transparent, and to allow it to be used to make decisions. So one of those I'm going to leave primarily for Campbell Ingram to talk about, which is the update on the Delta Dry Year Response Pilot Program. But it's using that satellite technology as well as a combination of ground truthing to improve the quality of our understanding and the immediacy of the data we need. For instance, if we go into another dry year with depleted reservoirs, it's almost a certainty that we will enter the next water year, next October, with depleted reservoirs, just because of the conditions we're in. So we may be back to applying lessons learned once again as we start the next water year. And then the last one I'm going to mention is the Delta Alternative Compliance Plan. And that is in effect right now. Kudos to the Central and South Delta Water Agency, who as part of the Delta Experimental Measurement Consortium led the development of the Alternative Compliance Plan, which is in effect today for the current water year, and which is relying on this new satellite technology. So I'll stop there. And Erik, I don't know whether I'm supposed to turn it over to you or directly over to Campbell.
Right on to Campbell, unless Mr. Chair, you want to ask if there are any immediate questions for Mr.
Okay,
George.
yeah, this will be, well, we have or Mr. George here. Let's see, is there any questions at this juncture, or do you want to hear the rest of the presentation? Some of anything you wanted to ask our water master at this juncture, otherwise we can come back to it at the end of the presentations.
I don't see any hands raised from.
Okay, good.
Members, Mr.
All
Chair.
right. Yeah, thanks, Michael. Okay, good. Just stand by and we'll go right to Campbell. Campbell, you're up. Thanks.
Great. Good evening, Chair Nottoli and commissioners and staff. It's good to be here with you tonight to talk about the Delta Drought Response Program, which Watermaster Michael George just so nicely teed up. This was a refresher, did a presentation previously, but quite a bit has happened since the last time we talked about it. So I'll give a bit of a refresher. This really is a pilot program to pay Delta farmers for practices that reduce consumptive use of water in the Delta. with the intent of trying to improve water quality and ecological conditions during the time of drought. As Michael George mentioned, it's also really it's a pilot effort to really best understand how we make these investments most effectively into the future, and hoping to help guide us to manage into this prolonged drought or into future droughts. It's been an extremely successful collaboration. Michael George worked with DWR, Erik Lobashevsky, and the 3 water agencies and Delta farmers to really try to identify how to most effectively design this program and make it so that it would provide a enticing revenue stream for Delta farmers who are interested in changing these practices, as well as provide the learning environment that we need to be able to help inform how we manage the drought. And Erik, I think was somebody going to put up the map? Great, thanks. I'll talk a little bit more about the map here in just a second. So in any event, this really was a great collaboration. It resulted in strengthened relationships with Delta agricultural interest, as well as, it will result in incredibly valuable information both for Delta farmers and for the state in how we move forward. In a very short amount of time, we received 85 applications to the program. We've approved 35 projects that will enroll about 8,800 acres and likely will result in an estimated 22,000 acre feet of water of consumptive use saved. And the map you see there just shows the practices, I'm sorry, the polygons of some of the projects that we've approved. And what you see is a good distribution throughout the Delta, north, central, and south, and a little bit in the northeast and northwest and southeast. And we also had a really nice distribution of practices. So just some of the most common practices were foregoing a corn crop and or tomatoes or other row crops, stopping the irrigation of alfalfa and or pasture, and then also planting in the spring non-irrigated small grains that can protect the soil, provide some agricultural commodity, but also then forego more consumptive crops later in the year. As Michael George mentioned, this is going to be combined with OpenET as well as other monitoring efforts, so that hopefully we get as much information out of this as possible about which of these practices are the most, conserve the greatest amount of water and will really help to inform the future practices. The expectation is also that this will also be completely open and transparent data, and there'll be reports coming out that will really help us understand collectively how we can move forward in the future. I just want to take a minute to really recognize the heroic efforts of everyone who's been involved in this process. We've really set some land speed records for standing up a state grant program, and it's absolutely the result of just the collaboration with the Delta community, as well as the dedication of staff from multiple corridors here. The selection panel included Michael George and one of his staff members, Lindsay Kammerer, Erik Lobashevsky from the Department of Water Resources, Michelle Leinfelder-Miles, who is a UC Ag advisor for the Delta, Ray Vandervoort, who's an employee with California Department of Food and Agriculture, and Josue Medin Azuara, who's a UC Merced ag economist. So that group came together, reviewed all of these applications, interacted individually with each of the farmers, and continues to interact with those farmers to help them through the grant execution process. It's been a tremendous lift and a lot of dedication. One more really unsung hero is Hope Miller on our staff, who has just handled all of a brand new employee to the Conservancy and has handled all of the administrative capacity or issues to include processing all the grant agreements and starting to pay invoices. So overall, a great learning experience, provides good information to the farmers, to the state at a fair market value for the practices that we're incentivizing. The last thing I'd like to say is, we're busy executing grant agreements now, but the hope is that there will be funding available to do this program again next year. Hopefully, because we've already done it this year, we would be able to start it earlier. Clearly, we will continue to be in drought conditions. It will just be a matter of whether or not funding is available to continue the program yesterday. So with that, I'll leave it there and be happy to answer any questions about the program.
Thanks, Campbell. And commissioners, any questions at this juncture?
See, Commissioner Eddy has his hand raised.
Okay, go ahead. Commissioner Eddy, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. In regards to the pilot program itself, what was the funding level for that? And then what was the average project kind of cost?
So the funding level was a total of $10 million from the drought response budget item that came from Department of Water Resources to the Delta Conservancy. We had 8 million of that available for projects, and 1.6 million that will go into a UC Davis contract to help with the monitoring, to do all the ground truthing and verification in conjunction with OpenET. And then the remainder was cost for implementing the program. It's hard to say average. We had a minimum of 100 contiguous acres as the the minimum that we wanted to fund, and then a maximum of 500 contiguous acres. So, and we really had everything in between. But it'd be hard. I don't know, Michael. I don't know if you could, off the top of your head, give an average.
Can't give an average off the top of my head, but I think the number that would be useful, Commissioner Eddy, is to know that every acre that was enrolled, that is a total of about 8,800 acres, was enrolled at $900 per acre response. So as Campbell says, minimum of 100 acres, maximum of 500 acres. I would, kind of spitball it that the average is probably close to midway between those. And however many acres you enrolled, and these were farmable acres, not just gross acres, however many acres you enrolled and agreed to take on these responsibilities and carry out these activities, you were funded at $900 per acre, about 25% up front, 50% during the course of the year, and the final 25% after you complete it.
Perfect, thank you.
Anyone else? Thanks, Commissioner Eddy. Yeah, well, just quickly, and maybe you said and I missed it. What was the projected savings, water savings through all the projects?
At 8,800 acres enrolled, we simply did a rough average of about 2 to 2.5 acre feet conserved. That's a pretty rough average. There were less, but then there's also significantly more. So we just calculate that out as an estimate of about 22,000 acre feet conserved.
And that's the estimate. Will there be actual measurement at the end of the season? Is that the intent?
Absolutely. The way we've structured it is there's essentially hypotheses written into the grant agreements. And the idea is to actually compare the expected water use for the foregone process and or whatever new crop is planted. And then with OpenET, we can pretty accurately measure the amount of consumptive use and compare that to nearby fields. So the whole purpose of the program really is to get a much better idea of what is the water savings from these change practices through OpenET, but then also through more on the ground instrumentation that UC Davis will be putting up. And in the end, we should have a really good idea of what's the most cost effective, where can we get the greatest amount of water savings, and how might we structure a program in the future to be most effective.
Just one of the questions. So is it anticipated that the water will, so to speak, stay in the Delta? I trust most of it was draws from the river. I don't know if there was any of the applications actually utilized groundwater as a part of it. Maybe there was a combination thereof. So that calculation of the 20,000 acre feet projected would support flows throughout the season, or what's anticipated?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, all of the practices ultimately were applied irrigation. So water coming in, being applied to the crops, or foregone application of irrigation. So theoretically, that water stays in channel. And so the expectation is that is improving water quality. So it's also, helping to provide hydrologic pressure against the salinity intrusion, as well as just improve ecological conditions. So that's the intent. It's, as you can imagine, that diffuse of projects throughout the Delta, it's going to be hard to really quantify those benefits, but certainly that's the expectation at that scale of 22,000 acre feet.
And if I could just add to that, it's important to note that one of the provisions of the program is that any savings generated will not be used to augment exports. It will be used, as you say, Chair Nottoli, to protect the health of the Delta. And I think that's an important baseline concept, and a lot of credit, frankly, to the Department of Water Resources to step up and fund a program that did not result in increased ability to export.
Well, thank you both. I know that you were part of the committee review committees, the construct of the committee, and spent a lot of time reviewing these and certainly, evaluating them and then moving through them with the approval process. So again, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Campbell, and to all others that served on the committee. I know you had some others, and again, thank you to the Department of Water Resources. So really appreciate it. And again, thanks for your presentations this evening. So we've got one other presenter, and then we'll come back for any questions the commission may have of any of our presenters. And Mr. Nomellini, Dante.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I would like to acknowledge the good effort of Michael George and our executive officer of the Delta Conservancy for undertaking the project. The evapotranspiration in the Delta is kind of a complicated issue. We have high groundwater in much of the Delta that supplies the needs of the crop. Diversions from the river really don't indicate what the loss is in the Delta by use, because the drainage pumps are running almost constantly. And in many cases, even in the uplands, the irrigation starts and the drainage pumps start about the same time. So it's important to get a good understanding of what the real savings are in various practices. It's important to the preservation of the Delta that we not sell the Delta out economically through these programs. And I think Michael George made it clear and acknowledged that if there is such a program, it should be related to trying to help during a drought and not become another supply for the export of water, which was supposed to be developed from surplus waters within the watershed of not only the Delta, but the North Coast. I think it's important to recognize what's happened in the past. And in my view, there's been a pattern of practice of the two major water projects that are responsible under their water rights for maintaining Delta water quality standards. And what has happened is that the projects have not designed their operations to actually meet subsequent drought years. And therefore they have exported water that, had it not been exported in prior years or even in the current year, that would have been, had it been properly used, would have allowed meeting the water quality standards. And the excuse for avoiding the meeting of the standards is what we call an emergency. And we've had temporary emergency challenges or requests, I should say, granted by the State Water Resource Control Board. Now, droughts are really not emergencies. If you look at the history of the reoccurrence of droughts, there have been many. And in fact, the design of the projects was centered around a 6-year drought in the years, I'd say 28, 29 through 34, which had not been utilized. That drought was utilized by the planners of the project, but not by the current operators. And the reasoning is that they use a forecasting method to determine, let's say you get in January or February of the year, you really don't know what the water supply is going to be that year because there's still rainfall periods and even snow precipitation possibilities that you go on. So the decisions are made early on and exports of water take place at that time. And the forecasting is the focus of, I think, a lot of good faith effort at the present time. But prior forecasts were based on 50 years in the past. In some cases, they were talking about going with 30 years. And of course, the real test is, given where we are today, with reservoir storage the way it is, demand the way it is, why wouldn't we see what the game plan would result from an analysis of our present condition and assuming a dry year from the past? In other words, you can pick the most extreme and set a bookend for where we are. Now, we have been advocating, we, Central Delta Water Agency, and I'm the manager of that, and also co-counsel for it. But we have urged that we actually have a game plan as to how we might operate if this year turns out to be a dry year or a drought year. And next year, I mean, we could have a series of 10 dry years if you look back at historical circumstances. And we've had multiple ice ages over the last period of time, over hundreds of years. And our cycle could be in part due to that, although it appears clear that the climate at the present time is warming, but where it fits into the overall water availability cycle is a big problem for us. So what we have is a circumstance where the projects intending to develop surplus water, that means water in excess of the needs of all the needs in our watershed, the Delta watershed and from any watershed of origin. And it was planned to continue to develop water so that only the surplus water would be taken away. And in fact, we in the watershed of the Delta and in other watersheds of origin have the right to recapture water back from the projects. Now, the plan was to have 5 million acre feet of additional water, surplus water, from the North Coast development of dams and tunnels. And that 5 million acre feet annually was expected to be by the year 2000. So the planners of the projects recognized that development in the watersheds of origin, as well as the development of demand in the contractor areas, including the Valley, Southern California, where we have desert development going on today, that it would come online, and it did not happen. The first project was the Dos Rios project, and it was sent back for further study at the same time that the environment movement was building, and at the same time there was Wild Rivers legislation. So our predicament today is huge. And in my opinion, there's no way that I can see that we can develop 5 million or 7 million acre feet. So we're going to have huge impacts associated. It looks like they're going to fall mostly on agriculture. So there's going to be a huge fallowing of land with no solution. The projects that we're talking about building, like Sykes Reservoir and others, will come nowhere near producing millions of acre feet in a reoccurrence of a drought. So anyway, I hate to paint a bad picture, but we believe that the emergency declarations that resulted in reducing water salinity protection for the Delta are improper in terms of application and illegal, directly contrary to court decisions. So we hate to see anybody go without water, but we think the conduct that's gone on in the past, and I'm hopeful that it will be changed currently, and in the future. But there were tremendous amounts of water transfers where property was, water rights, I should say, was yielded in the northern part of the Sacramento Valley, and they were allowed to pump groundwater in substitution, which meant there was a double hit because the water that was sold went into storage and then was later transferred down the valley. And the groundwater substitution pulls water from the river and reduces the accretions to the delta. So it's kind of a, dark cloud in my view. I see glimmers of hope with not only the state board, but hopefully with the conduct of the Bureau of Reclamation, Department of Water Resources. So thank you very much for the opportunity to comment. And Michael George and others have been, earnestly trying to understand the facts and help in the overall situation.
Great. Well, thank you, Dante. Thank you for your leadership and certainly all the experience you draw upon, your wealth of knowledge, but certainly appreciate all your years of effort in the Delta and certainly in matters of water. Thank you for your presentation this evening. Well, let me go back to our commission members and then we'll go to the members of the public. Are there any questions for our panelists? Again, we certainly thank Michael and Campbell and Dante once again. So questions? Yeah, Oscar, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to thank them both. I every time Watermaster comes to speak on March 17th, I learned something new. Not to say that I don't between that, but I always love his presentations and thank you for sharing what you did and the updates as you learned them from the court decisions more recently to kind of clarify, at least in part, what we are all concerned about, and that is kind of how this system is going to have to work. And then thank you, Ingram, or Campbell, excuse me, for your presentation as well. It's always fascinating to listen to think about how we might be able to do business differently. And it's going to be tricky for sure. But thank you for your leadership, and you're absolutely right. The people that have put together this very complicated formula to sort of help us through some challenging times. It's not over by any means. And I always learn when Dante comments as well. So thank you all, gentlemen.
Great. Thanks, Oscar. Well said. Other commissioners, any comments or questions? Okay. Before our panelists go, we can go to Morgan. Morgan, do we have any public comments at this point?
I currently see no hands raised.
Okay, must mean you covered a lot of ground and certainly brought us a wealth of information. So if there are no members of the public, this was a receive and file item. And we want to certainly thank our presenters one more time and trust we might get updates as the year progresses. So appreciate it so very much. Before we go to our next item, I just want to acknowledge that Commissioner Vogel has joined us, and so welcome, Nancy. And Commissioner Bush has departed, as we noted. He would have to leave around the 5 o'clock hour. So Nancy, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, with that then let's move to item number 10, which is the, and again, I wanted to, before we introduce the item, just thank Commissioner Bush, who I know has assisted in this item per the commission action to delegate to the chair and Commissioner Bush to work on some of this with our current executive director. And again, thank you, Brian, and we'll get a chance to thank him as we move through the process. Anyway, item 10 is the consideration of the appointment of a commission subcommittee to screen for the executive director applications and with an outline of the process that we'll embark upon here in the weeks to come. So Erik, I'll turn to you to give us the update, and then we'll get commission comments and questions and then entertain a motion as to direction on this matter. So Erik, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Nottoli, and also thanks to Commissioner Bush. Both of these two have worked to finalize the job description, which is pretty much ready to go out at any moment. There's one outstanding question that was posed to me about the formatting of it. I'm working that through with our HR staff liaisons at the Department of General Services. And I would expect that the job posting will be out next week. The schedule is for it to be open with an application deadline somewhere around the first few days of May, maybe as late as May 6th. The week of May 9th is when I would suggest that the screening subcommittee would meet to go over the applications received, to subject them to some screening criteria, and then to arrive at a list of candidates to invite in for an interview with the full commission. And then that interview with the full commission would or could occur at the commission's May 19th meeting. I'll do my best to clear the decks of a lot of other items so that the commission can focus on that at that time, because the commission does conduct these interviews in a closed session, but it's the entirety of the commission. And at least my own personal experience with this process is, as Chair Nottoli knows too well, because he was chair at the time, can't get away from this. There were 3 candidates that the commission considered with interviews back in 2013. So that's kind of the outline of the process. Certainly if it's the desire of the full commission to be involved at every step of the way, that's perfectly fine. Anytime we convene more than 2 members of the commission, it's considered a meeting of the commission, so it will be publicly noticed. But it's also worth noting that the screening process for reviewing executive director candidates can occur in closed session. And here's where I will ask our General Counsel and Deputy Attorney General Carlos Mejia to weigh in and correct me if I've misstated anything. But that will be a closed session, as will be the interviews at the May 19th meeting. And then it's expected that the commission would arrive at a decision for their preferred candidate at the May 19th meeting. And before concluding that meeting, confirm that the candidate accepts the offer. And of course, there will be other details to work out. But that would kind of conclude the process for the hiring on May 19th. I hope I didn't leave out anything important, Mr. Chair, but I think those are the next steps. And so if there is a desire to form a commission subcommittee, I don't think it would be more than a handful of hours to review what comes in, and then maybe 1 to 2 hours to meet as a subcommittee to go through the screening. So I might have overestimated when I said 8 to 10 hours. It probably would be a little bit less than that.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks for, I think, giving us an outline. Certainly it is up, as you said, up to the commission to determine. So I guess I would, at this juncture, pause here for questions or thoughts. I think your recommendation leans towards forming a subcommittee, and we can construct that in any number of ways to do the paper screening or screening of applications anyway, and then to have the full commission at the May 19th meeting, as you said, not to be redundant here, where we would convene and for whatever the preferred number of candidates would be to then conduct the interviews during our next regular session. So in closed session. So let me turn my fellow commissioners and thoughts, questions, comments about this, and then we'll bring it back for some direction. Yes, Oscar, go ahead.
Well, I'll comment if nobody else has any comments at the moment, but I think a subcommittee reviewing the applications, so hopefully we get a good candidate pool, and then kind of proceed as Eric's outlined in terms of, creating some sense of criteria. I suspect we'll get some support with that. I know that other state agencies help with our HR work, so we'll get some help with that. And then recommend to the full board, whatever the appropriate number would be for prospective candidates to be interviewed, and then we go through the process. And it sounds like Eric's thought it through, so.
Okay, good. Thanks, Oscar. Commissioner Slater, Tom.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think you're wise to pare it down to a small committee and just as Erik expressed, and so did you, Don. So I'm in favor of that as well.
Okay, good. Thanks, Tom. Other thoughts?
Don?
Yeah, John, go ahead.
Yes, so the smaller committee would review and then make a recommendation of 2 or 3 individuals. But would the entire commission get a list of all those that applied?
Certainly could. Yeah, we certainly could, John. I think that's excellent suggestion. So you'd have the knowledge of the pool and the applications that were received, and I think it would allow certainly be circulated under a separate cover to the commission members. But if there was a desire by several members to beyond what was the screening process, I think commissioners certainly could call forward another candidate. We'd have to adjust accordingly relative to our interviews. But no, I think it's a good suggestion. Unless there's any objection, I would say that that's entirely appropriate. So
thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I'm sorry
Yeah,
for interrupting, but I probably should have indicated something to the commission, which is, even though this is a state hiring process, it's a very open process in terms of crafting it the way the commission would like to craft it. I fully expected to be told a number of ways how we needed to hew to specific criteria. Of course, the commission cannot discriminate in its hiring, so there's some really basics. But aside from that, it's a very open process to design as the commission sees fit. And so in terms of developing the screening criteria and even the proposed interview questions, I could either continue to work with Chair Nottoli and Commissioner Bush, certainly for the screening criteria, but even in terms of the interview questions, that could be something that the screening committee finalizes when they meet, even though that will be pretty close to when the interviews will be conducted. But I don't see any reason why those couldn't be presented to Chair Nottoli and Commissioner Bush, but then vetted further with the subcommittee when they meet.
sure. Okay. And then as far as any construct of the committee, and it's up to the commission, but I think we'd want to have representative from the various member parties that constitute the commission, county supervisors, city council members, reclamation district members, and state agency representatives. So I think we should at least have one representative from each of those category of folks that amongst us who serve on the commission. It could be more than that. You could have a couple, I guess, if we chose to. I guess to be half of the commission, but again, it's entirely up to us to decide that. But I unless I hear any objections, seems like for those that have spoken, that the subcommittee approach is one that meets with favor. And I would note, as you said, Erik, that we, formulation of questions for the formal interviews is something that we can, certainly share with, commission members as well. And the committee could be, given that task to at least refine those and forward those to the commission in advance of the May 19th meeting. So unless there's any other objections, and we'll take public comment here in just a moment, but I'm going to be thinking about it, because I'm going to first of all ask for volunteers for the screening committee, assuming that's the desire of the commission to go forward. So if you're inclined to do so, I'll give you a moment to think about that. And let me go to public comment here, and then I'll bring it back to the commission for direction and a motion if appropriate. Any public comment? Any folks with their hands up, Morgan?
I see no hands raised at the moment.
Okay. All right. Okay, back to the commission then. Are there volunteers? And again, if that construct that I just mentioned seems, be in any way objectionable, let me know that too. But I think trying to get at least one representative from, county, city, reclamation, and state agencies as a screening committee. And we could have more if you wanted to have two, or there were a couple from one of those categories that desire to serve. So.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to help if
Great.
you would like.
Well, good. Your willingness to help is accepted, Tom. We got you. We got our first committee member. Okay. All right.
If you tell me no, thank you, Tom, I'll find someone else.
Okay, we got one. Have we got two?
Well, there's only 4 of us state reps, and I'll take one for the team here.
Okay, Nancy. Well, thank you. Okay, we got 2. And we got 3.
Good. Good.
Yeah, you got to yell fish on.
Got Nancy and Tom. How about from our city reps? I know that Paul's not with us this evening, and George gonna miss the cut on this one. So
Yeah, you might want to come back to that, Mr. Chair.
okay, all right, okay, very good. Okay, county supervisors. John, are you looking like you want to do it?
Did you say Oscar?
Yeah.
I know the last name starts with a V. You guys are either one of you.
Well, Mr. Chair, are you planning to participate? I thought you were going to be a part of that.
Yeah, and I can and will be. Again, I just wanted to I wanted to broaden this. Obviously, I don't want to think that chairs hogging all the opportunity here. So again, I certainly would show deference, and I could participate, or at least sit in the screening committee if you like. And again, not to make it top heavy with county representatives, I certainly would do that. But if you or John or Diane or Chuck would like the opportunity, I certainly would show great deference to that as well. So
I'm happy to do it if nobody else is, but
I'll second that.
John,
you're quick on it.
Yeah, thank you, John.
He's quick on this.
Count on you.
Got your back, buddy.
Commissioner Vogel and I didn't follow up with if no one else will. We just jumped in.
What you guys did is called with both feet. I did with 1 foot, and then John shoved me in. So that's
there you go.
that's what
Okay.
happens.
Well, that's 3. Again, I will gladly be a part of that, and certainly as appropriate in helping with the screening through the chair. And then it may be, since we don't have all of our city representatives here, I know we've got Al on the phone, but Paul's not with us. So maybe we can follow up on that again. If either one were interested, we can encourage that. Again, this is a screening committee, and so the work is important, but it'll still be up to the entire commission. Rest assured to, be a part of the interviews, and if there are other questions along the way, but certainly to be, obviously a very integral part of making the selection at the May 19th or subsequent dates. So, all right, well, we have a committee, and
Mr. Chair, I don't know, this might be a question for Deputy Attorney General Mejia. I don't know if you can just appoint that committee or if it should be in the form of a motion, but that's the one thing I didn't quite do my homework on before. This.
okay, Carlos, well, Carlos, you get a chance to weigh in here, so.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will technically be a sub-body of the commission for Bagley-Keene purposes. So it would be helpful if the motion has as much specificity as possible, since it sounds like the commission has settled on or is leaning towards certain members by name. It'd be helpful to so state, and then to the extent that some further conversations are needed to identify a category of representative, like someone representing the cities, I'd suggest that perhaps the commission delegate that authority to the chair, you, Chair Nottoli, and empower you to appoint a member from that group to serve on this committee.
Thanks, Carlos. So that's helpful. So,
I'll make a motion that the chair be authorized to create a subcommittee for the purposes of hiring new executive director. And he can choose by categories or by those individuals who have already indicated they want to serve.
I think it would be helpful if we've had folks step forward, we make that, those folks, we would make them a party committee, and then with the additional authority, we can add as, you know, as necessary, and if there's a willingness by one of the city representatives to participate. So, okay, we have a motion. John, quick to the motion, quick to. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Tom, was that you?
I was one of them. I'm not sure if someone else.
Yeah. All right, well, we have a motion and a second, as noted, council's outline and in the motion. And yeah, I want to thank those who've stepped forward this evening. Let me ask any public comment on the motion.
I see no hands raised right now.
Okay, with that, then, unless there's anything else for good of the order, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. Go ahead, Mark.
Chair Nottoli,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nguyen,
Yes.
Commissioner Villegas,
Yes.
Commissioner Vasquez,
Yes.
Commissioner Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Nakanishi, Commissioner Nakanishi, you're still muted. I'll come back. Commissioner Paroli,
Yes.
Commissioner Slater,
Yes.
Commissioner Agar,
Yes.
Commissioner Eddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogel,
Yes.
and coming back to Commissioner Nakanishi. Okay, we have 10 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions.
Very good. Thank you, Morgan. Eric, before you leave this item, I know that you shared with me, you got some feedback from folks who would like to weigh in on the process, obviously, as it moves forward, and you may have talked with council about this. Is there anything you, I think, would be helpful for this juncture if folks wanted to channel communications relative to our, beyond obviously the selection process we've outlined here, but if, for example, our advisory committee had certain characteristics that they felt were important, again, it's still going to be wholly and fully within the commission's authority here, but if there was going to be a way to channel that appropriately, and if there were comments from the staff as well, again, recognizing full authority is vested with the commission. So, Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and my apology for not including that earlier. I did have a chance to speak with Deputy Attorney General Mejia about this. The chair's request is that for Carlos Mejia to be participating with the commission when you conduct those interviews, and so he would be willing to be a conduit for the information. I would expect it would be in a written form, and he would deliver that. The whole idea is that for it to be truly, confidential, because certainly if there are any, comments such as, make sure it's not someone like Eric in this regard. I want people to really speak very freely about that, whether it would be staff or advisory committee members. So he did offer to be the person to transmit that information, not necessarily to interpret it or to convey it, but to transmit it to the commission members. So.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Carl. Tom, you had a hand up.
Yeah, I'm off. Not knowing how this will proceed, maybe some education on. I'm very concerned if we review resume, if you will, before we meet at the next meeting or before we can discuss it with a fellow board member, how much are we able to review? If someone asks me a question, what can I say? Or nothing at all? I've been through this before where it's tight-lipped. But I'm happy to, I just want some direction.
Okay, good. No, good question, Tom. Maybe Carlos or Eric could help us, I think, just with general procedures and as we move forward to, actually soliciting and receiving applications, and those are distributed to subcommittee and then ultimately to the commission, kind of, how that process kind of unfolds relative to, things that would be held in confidence of a personnel or personnel nature. Obviously, their resumes would be potentially included, letters of recommendation and such. And, some of that becomes public information, some does not. So I'll turn to Carlos or to Eric to help respond.
Yeah, I'll start, but I would welcome Carlos to jump in as well. I think it would be advised to, treat this as a confidential matter and, to hold it pretty close to the vest. My own personal experience is that where it really comes out into the open is when you see people looking very well dressed showing up for the May 19th commission meeting, such as I did 8 years ago. And then you kind of, the secret's out at that point, like, oh, I think I know why they're here looking so sharply dressed. It'll be interesting what we all look like on May 19th, not having met in person for 2 years. So, but aside from that, and I guess that's an advertisement for anyone who really wants to get an inside scoop, just to show up in person on May 19th and kind of come to a conclusion about who might be interviewing. But aside from that, I think it would be wise to, keep it a fairly confidential matter. And I would, if I were a job seeker, I would certainly appreciate that, especially if I was, leaving a position that I might not have already told my boss about. So.
Thanks, Eric.
I don't know if that answers Commissioner Slater's question, but.
Yeah, it does. And I agree with that process. And maybe one other quick question though, but what about a fellow commissioner that ultimately is going to listen into an interview? Can they ask questions and have dialogue back and forth to the subcommittee?
If I may, Commissioner Slater, the Bagley-Keene Act prohibits what we refer to as serial meetings. That is where a majority of the commission were to engage in a conversation or series of conversations without or outside the confines of a noticed meeting. So certainly 2 commissioners can talk to each other. However, given the potential size of the hiring committee, were the committee to consider information that were then transmitted to enough members of the commission that a majority now knew it, that could potentially constitute a serial meeting. So I don't mean to discourage communications among the commissioners, but certainly the safest course of action is to have those conversations during a notice meeting. Because this is a personnel appointment, those conversations can take place during closed session. And certainly, while an individual communication between 2 commissioners would not in and of itself constitute a serial meeting, given the number of commissioners that are going to be involved in the subcommittee, I'd advise caution there.
Thank you.
Carlos, just one question comes to mind. So kind of back maybe to Tom's initial question and what Commissioner Vasquez pointed out earlier. Once filing has closed and application has been accepted, and even though it's going to be the responsibility initially for the committee to screen those down, I guess I would just say I think it would be appropriate under confidential cover to at least share with all commissioners just the names of the folks who have applied. And that way people have a knowledge, and if you get approached, then you can be sensitive to that, because otherwise you might not know as a commissioner that so-and-so's has applied, or you might have just a conversation and not know that. So I think that way there's a disclosure to all of us, and certainly the committee will do its work and then forward that obviously to the full commission for its follow-up. So Commissioner Eddy.
Thank you, sir. If there was interest by a commissioner to attend the subcommittee meeting, they could, correct? They wouldn't be prohibited from attending that subcommittee meeting if they were not appointed.
believe that's true. And Carlos, does that get, but if you had 8 or 9 show up, then, but we certainly can have up to a majority of the commission members could sit in and, or I guess even participate to the degree that we structure it that way in that subcommittee.
That's correct, Mr. Chair, and that doesn't really pose a Bagley-Keene concern because the meeting of the subcommittee will also have to be noticed. And so if it's the commission's pleasure, I can work with the clerk or the executive director to ensure that the agenda language contemplates that a majority of the commission itself may be present. And then that would give any member of the commission, if the commission so desires, the flexibility to attend and participate or attend and observe.
Yeah, that'd be great. So if everybody wanted to show up, we certainly would welcome that. And, committee can do its work with other commissioners present. So yeah, I think so. To your point, does that respond, Commissioner Reddy? Okay. Very good. Okay, any other thoughts or comments as we embark on this? Okay, seeing none, then thank you, Eric. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, commission members. And we've got some work to do between now and May 19th, and hopefully we'll be well prepared when we come into session on the 19th to continue to follow through on the process. All right. If there's nothing further on this item, let's go. I know we're getting well into the time here, so we're going to go to item number 11, which is the update on the Caltrans Clean Grant and some consideration of delegating authority to our executive director. I think Kirsten is going to handle this. And I know Commissioner Hagar referenced it earlier on, and I know has kept us apprised of this opportunity in some of his reports to the commission previously as well. So, okay, with that, well, Eric, did you want to introduce it?
Nope. Turn it over to Kirsten.
Okay, Kirsten, you're on.
Thanks, Chair Nottoli and Commission members. I'm Kirsten Pringle. I'm one of the newest Commission staff members. I'm a senior environmental planner. I started at the beginning of February, so this is my first official Commission meeting, so I'm really excited to be here today.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm no stranger to the Delta. I previously worked in water, but I'm getting to see the Delta in a whole new way now, and I'm especially excited to be presenting on this project today. So I'm going to try to keep it brief because I know we have some agenda items after mine, but I'm happy to answer any questions. So my presentation today is going to provide a little bit of background information on this proposed project to install wayfinding interpretive signs in the Delta as being funded by a Clean California Initiative grant that the commission received with Caltrans District 10. My purpose, so as part of, after my presentation today, we'll be asking you, the commission, to authorize the executive director to approve a cooperative agreement with Caltrans, which will allow us to receive and spend the grant funding. So my presentation will cover the project itself, the background, and also overview of that cooperative agreement. So just a little bit of background of how we got here today. The need for wayfinding signs, in particular in the Delta, was identified in the Delta Marketing Task Force 5-year marketing plan. Even though in my short time I've worked with the commission, I've actually heard this from a couple of residents in the Delta, the lack of signage, especially to help visitors to the Delta. To address this need, the Delta Conservancy, in coordination with the commission and funded by the Delta Stewardship Council, created the Delta Sign Plan in June 2018. So some of you may remember this plan, but the Delta Sign Plan provides general guidance for locations of different types of signs in the Delta and also for the designs of these signs. So the work that we're going to be doing as part of this project will build upon previous work already done on this topic. Next slide, please, Natasha. So bringing us to today, the commission and Caltrans District 10 applied to receive grant funding to install wayfinding interpretive signs in the Delta from the Clean California Initiative. And Commissioner Agar can probably give more information about what this initiative is, but a brief overview is that it's a statewide funding program to provide local and regional funding for community and roadside beautification projects. So we were successful in getting the grant funding of $430,000 to install up to 30 wayfinding signs and 10 interpretive signs in the Delta. There may be a few more or less signs depending on what the funding allows, but that's basically what's in the scope. A little bit of considerations to think about when we talk about this project and move into project implementations is that the signs must be installed along state routes, or if possible, county roads. So they must be in the Caltrans right of way and also in the county right of way. We're also be focusing the signs within the jurisdictions of Caltrans Districts 10 and 3, which includes the Delta portions of Sacramento, Yolo, and San Joaquin counties. And this is going to be a really collaborative process with Caltrans. And so we'll be working with them to identify the sign locations, also on the sign designs. And as we talk about when we get to the scope portion, there'll be some other things that they'll be supporting us with. But community outreach is a huge portion of this. So I actually came from a background of doing a lot of community engagement, as I said, specifically around water projects. And that is a key part of this, is getting the public's input on the locations, but also most importantly, what do we want the signs to point to? What should be featured on the signs? And for the interpretive signs, what topics should we be putting on them?
Kirsten, can I just ask you real quickly before you go to the next slide? So you have along state routes and county roads, can they also be within the cities? Or Jason, you have some cities that lie within the Delta, obviously, and state highways that actually, cut through some of those communities, so.
Yeah, they can be in the cities. So as you know, or may know, the 160 kind of cuts in and out of some of the more rural areas, but actually goes through some of the cities in the Delta as well. And we've been preliminarily scouting out some locations along the 160 and also along the 12. And so it's not completely limited, my understanding, to just the state routes, but it would obviously be easiest to have it along it because it'll be in the Caltrans right away. However, we are also looking at some locations that are off the 5, which will actually be on county roads. And so we would obviously need to work with the counties to make sure it's installed in the county right away. But they will be located, at least for the wayfinding signs, in public locations. So easements or right of ways owned by either local, regional, or state agencies.
So how about Highway 4 included in that as well?
We haven't scoped out locations of Highway 4 as a potential. We are focusing it on Yolo, Sacramento, and San Joaquin counties because those are the jurisdictions of Caltrans Districts 3 and 10.
Thanks.
So I just want to briefly give you some visuals. I'm a very visual person, but I know the term wayfinding interpretive sign, everyone may not understand what those are. So these are some examples of what wayfinding signs are. The image on the left is actually taken from the Delta sign plan, and the image on the right is taken from Caltrans standards. So wayfinding signs use a combination of words and symbols and mileage markers to show you the way and the distance to a specific feature or community. And based on our preliminary discussions with Caltrans, it's likely that we'll be installing signs that look more similar to kind of the darker blue or maybe purplish sign that you're seeing on the screen. That's in line with the basic Caltrans standards. However, we probably will have some flexibility to put specific symbols that are unique to the Delta. And these signs could point to specific unique places in the Delta that we want visitors to see, but also places that are maybe important to those that live and work in the Delta. So this could be areas of agritourism, it could be important cultural features, it could be museums, recreation features. There's actually a large amount of things that we can point to, and this is one of the main things we're going to be asking for public input on because we have so many things we need help narrowing it down. Next slide, Natasha. And this is an example of interpretive signs. So interpretive signs are a little different. They're bigger. They're going to be located in areas where people can get out of their cars and walk around, or that are easily accessible by pedestrians or cyclists. And interpretive signs really tell a story. So we're trying to tell a story about a place, and it could be about a specific places or buildings, maybe its past, its future. It could be telling about our natural landscapes or cultural history of the Delta. So it's really more about informing. And you've probably seen these signs at like state parks or regional parks. And these will be a little different, where the wayfinding signs will be like right off the road. These may be located, as you were noting, Chair Nottoli, in maybe city centers or places where people are already walking around and interacting. Next slide. So in order to receive the Clean California Initiative grant funding, we must execute a cooperative agreement with Caltrans. So a brief overview, the cooperative agreement, it's mostly legal terms about how we're going to use the funds. But importantly, it also outlines our scope. So what is the commission going to do? And then also what are we going to partner with Caltrans to do? So this slide provides an overview of what our scope items are and anticipated schedule to do it. So just a very brief overview, the commission will be overseeing the designs of both the wayfinding and interpretive sign features that will probably be partnering perhaps with state parks or regional parks to do some of the interpretive sign work. And then also selecting the sign locations that will be done in really close coordination with Caltrans, because we want to make sure especially the wayfinding signs are placed in places that are safe for motorists. Caltrans will be the lead for this California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, but we'll be responsible for all the other permitting agreements that need to be done to install the signs. We'll be executing maintenance agreements for the long-term maintenance of the signs, so just making sure the areas around the signs are free of trash, and that if the signs at any point are damaged, or they get graffiti or someone runs into it, that we're able to replace them. And then we'll also be overseeing printing and installation of the signs. And as I stated earlier, community outreach is a really big component of this. So we anticipate having a lot of community outreach, specifically at the beginning. I'm anticipating probably a couple of workshops and doing a lot of presentations to local community groups, especially around the communities where the signs may be installed. And then throughout the lifetime of the project, we'll also be providing periodic updates on how the installation is going. And we hope to have all the signs installed by the end of this year or the beginning of next year. Next slide. So just in conclusion, again, what we're asking for you today is to authorize the executive director to execute a cooperative agreement with Caltrans. If the authorization is provided today, our immediate next steps would then continue working with Caltrans to assess potential locations, and then also start community outreach. So getting the word out there, informing people that this project is happening, and also starting to solicit input specifically on the features of those wayfinding signs and the topics for those interpretive signs. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Kirsten. And again, really appreciate the effort thus far. And this is exciting. And if I recall correctly, some of our graduates from our Delta Leadership Program have worked on projects that have kind of revolved around, obviously, introducing folks and helping people guide them through signage and other interpretive methods through the Delta. And I know that we've talked about this, in the, certainly in the construct of the Natural Heritage Area. And if I'm not mistaken, I think even Commissioner Wynn may have worked on this when he was with one of the leadership classes. So, and I see a bunch of hands. So let me go to our commission members, Commissioner Agar, and then we have Carol Jensen and Commissioner Villegas as well. So go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Kristen. Really appreciate that. I just want to add to some of that conversation. First, I'd like to thank the partnership we've had and working together with Erik and Kristen to put our application together for this state beautification project, which we were awarded that $430,000. The challenge that we have, and I know that it may not seem a whole long time, but it's very short to us in regards to delivering this project by the end of this year. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. And so the sooner we can get the cooperative agreement executed, the better off we are in getting the contracts out and the signs approved and developed and actually installed. So just want to throw that out there. I also want to just say that I'm excited with the team working with our partners in District 3. And of course, we like to see this project come to fruition again sooner than later. I know that the local grant application process was very competitive. Only a few projects in District 10 from our local partners were approved, whereas 19 was submitted on the local grant side and only 6 got approved. That was very challenging. So I'm glad we worked together to get this as a partnered project. And I'm excited about getting this very much started. I know the team has worked with the DPC or the commission staff just last week to start looking at some of the potential sites. Really, really looking forward to that. And if anybody wanted to know what approved projects, both state and local grants have been approved, I'll send a link to our clerk here, and everybody would have a easy access to see all the beautification, Clean California projects across the state that has been approved. I really want to encourage success in this project. And the reason why I say that is that this may open up future opportunities for other partnership projects in the Delta. And if we're successful here and we prove that we can be successful here, it may open up other funding opportunities. And so I just want to put that out there. And so we'll work very closely together and get this project out as committed. I'll stop there. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time.
Great. Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for your assistance and leadership as well. And I know it's going to involve county directors of transportation. And I certainly would just commit from our county that we'll be, stand ready to assist in those rights of way that, connect and link up with the proposed routes and placement and so forth. So, Carol, I'm going to go to Commissioner Villegas first, if that's okay, and then I'll come back to you. So, Commissioner Villegas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just be brief. First of all, congratulations, Kristen, on your new position. Thank you for the presentation. I think the prospects of utilizing these wayfinding and interpretive signs can be very exciting for the community to rally around. I know your public input, as you said, is an essential part of this. I would just offer the Clarksburg General Plan Advisory Committee is a committee made up of a range of different constituents in the community who are well-versed in challenges getting around the Delta. And so if you wanted to come to present to that committee, I have no doubt they would provide you with plenty of ideas and feedback about how they might see utilizing these signs to get around the Delta. So contact my office and I'll get you connected with the staff that put together the agendas. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Oscar. Thanks for that offer too. That's great. I have, again, I'll go to Vice Chair Nguyen. Carol, I'll get back to you in just a moment. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Don. And you're right. We had, our team had a project in their leadership in regards to that, but I would have to admit in comparison, we were kind of amateurish in our approach, although we gave it a wholehearted effort, but this is like Major League. And this is the big time. So I want to thank Kristen and certainly Caltrans in regards to this because it's long overdue. It's an outstanding addition to the Delta. And I think it will be tremendously successful in regards to some of the activities that we provide. So anyway, thanks, Don.
Great. You bet. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you. When you guys were working on the idea, I said it's in grand fashion. That's good. Okay. All right. Go back to Carol Jensen. Thank you for your patience. Carol.
You're most welcome, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I'm the chairperson of the Contra Costa County Historic Landmarks Commission, and also sit on the subcommittee for planning for the Delta Heritage area. If I may point out that including Highway 4 in the signage project would be rather important in that Highway 4 extending from Martinez along the longest coastline of the Delta, proceeding through Contra Costa County to Byron and then continuing on to Stockton is probably the largest amount of highway in the California Delta, comprising not only the Suisun Bay, Pittsburgh, Antioch, Brentwood, Bethel Island, but proceeding on to Stockton. In other words, not only the Suisun Bay, Carquinez Strait area, but moving on along the San Joaquin. And let's be reminded it is the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta Heritage Area. So including Highway 4, which essentially is the parallel highway to the entire Southern Delta border, should be included in the signage effort. In that Contra Costa County, of course, is the county that was first populated in the California Delta, starting with John Marsh, which of course will be our newest state is our newest state historic park. And to not include Carquinez Strait east through to Stockton in signage would essentially cut off the entire San Joaquin River aspect of the Delta. So I urge the commission as well as DPC to consider signage to include the Highway 4 corridor. And thank you very much for your time and allowing me to speak.
Great. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for sharing. And I don't know if Kirsten or Erik, you want to address that. It sounded like some of the funding came through one of the Caltrans districts, but I think certainly to Carol's point and recognizing obviously the broad overview that the commission has. And so whether there's some ability, if nothing else, to initially to make some of those connections and certainly giving something to build upon, even all the funding wasn't there. But thank you, Carol, for your suggestion. We'll certainly consider that. I see another hand up. Is it Russ Ryan? Russ?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to reach out also to, I'm going to put on another hat. I have several hats that I wear. We have Highway 12 that goes across Bolden Island. And this is something we have been talking about is signage on Bolden Island. As you know, a couple of years back, Caltrans improved that access route there across Bolden Island, and we took down a lot of the signs. So I really would like to incorporate, because I think there's some good messaging that we could do in some of the interpretive type signs. So I just want to put that out, and I may take this opportunity, not now, but to talk to Kirsten offline. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Russ. Thank you for your comments as well. Do we have any other members of the public that have a hand up? Yeah. Oh, excuse me, Morgan.
See no other hands raised at the moment.
So let me bring it back to the commission, and maybe Kirsten or Erik, you might want to respond to certainly Ms. Jensen's suggestions and comments.
Yeah, I can. Oh, go ahead, Erik.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. We're working with districts 10 and 3 on this, which doesn't extend into Contra Costa and Solano. Certainly, there's a lot of important, Highway 4 has significant mileage through San Joaquin County. And, but in terms of extending it into Contra Costa, it's just not really in the cards for this effort. But I hope that we can show great success with this, and then figure out a way to extend it with other funding sources so it's more comprehensive throughout the entirety of the Delta.
Thanks, Erik. I just wanted to maybe ask Dennis, obviously one of your colleagues is district director there, and this was a joint effort between 3 and 10 on the grant. Is there some opportunity to, I don't know, there may be other funding that comes down through the districts for normal signage, but maybe to at least get some entree. And again, I don't want to put him on the spot here. I'm just curious as as we go to work on this, and I think certainly whatever we do will be a template for utilization elsewhere throughout the Delta, county, cities, and obviously state highway system. So just curious.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe I can just say, first of all, I will reach out to my partners, and of course, the district director in 4. We've been transparent, at least internally, working with not just District 3, but also our partners in District 4. So this wasn't isolated, just so everybody knows. We were limited on funding, but that's where we're at this time. You did bring up some ideas, and like I said, I'm hoping that this really opens up other funding opportunities for all 3 districts in Caltrans to do this. In addition to this, and again, I'm hoping that we're successful, because the way the proposed governor's budget, and we'll know more in May, there is a potential additional $100 million to go towards either the local grant program, and maybe that's an opportunity where the Delta Protection Commission can submit another application with partnership with Caltrans, whether it's 4, 10, or 3, and then expand beyond what we've done or going to do. And so could be another opportunity in the near future, and that could happen very soon. But I will go ahead and continue to reach out to my partners in District 4, see what else we can do to partner, and hopefully it does provide a more of a complete network of signage in the whole Delta. But thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. That's encouraging, and appreciate your, as I said a moment ago, your continued leadership on this. So, okay, so we have the item before our commission to delegate authority as part of the recommendation here. And we've heard our comments. Anything else commission members want to add? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll move the item, Villegas.
Okay.
I'll second, Eddie.
Okay, so it's moved by Villegas, second by Eddie to approve the recommendation, staff recommendation, and noting obviously, the work that lies ahead, certainly in the comments, and hopefully we can build off this as we go forward. So, all right, if there's nothing further, then please call the roll.
Chair Nottoli,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nguyen,
Yes.
Commissioner Villegas,
Aye.
Commissioner Vasquez,
Yes.
Commissioner Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Nakanishi, once again, I'm seeing Commissioner Nakanishi muted, so I'll come back. Commissioner Paroli, Commissioner Paroli, will also come back. Commissioner Slater,
Yes.
Commissioner Agar,
Yes.
Commissioner Eddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogel,
Yes.
coming back to Commissioner Nakanishi. And going back to Commissioner Paroli. Okay, it looks like we have 9 yes votes and 0 no votes.
Okay. Thank you, Morgan. I know we're running a little bit long here this evening, so we'll go to our.
One more yes.
I know. Oh, one more yes, you said? Oh,
Yeah,
Commissioner Paroli. Oh, very good. Okay, good. Thanks. Good. You got it just under the wire.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, all right, let's move to item number 12. And this is consider a commission in written format from the commission relative to a position on Senate Bill 1065. So, Erik?
Yeah, thank you. Senate Bill 1065 was recently introduced by Senator Talamantes Eggman, who's our ex officio member on the commission. The bill relates to commercial abandoned and derelict vessel removal. This was an item at a recent commission meeting. It would form a commercial abandoned and derelict vessel coordinating council and also create a fund for that purpose. It's worth noting that the coordinating council would include 7 members, 7 voting members, also some non-voting members, but that one, at least as proposed in the legislation, one of those voting members would be a public member appointed by the commission. The legislation is supported by Sacramento County and the Delta Counties Coalition. I'm bringing it before the commission because it is an issue that has been long of interest to the commission. Commission's always supported removal of abandoned and derelict vessels, and I would recommend that the commission endorse the legislation and support the letter in the commission meeting packet that would be sent to the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Water.
Okay. Thanks, Erik. All right, we go to commission members. Comments, questions on?
Oh, and I should have also stated, I'm sorry, that Liliana Udong from representing Senator Eggman is here as her designee for this meeting, but is also the staff person working on that bill. And so if there are any particular questions, I'm sure she could do a great job of answering them.
Great, good. Well, thanks, Lillian. I'm glad you're with us. I know we introduced you earlier, and so thanks to your boss for introducing the legislation. Okay, so let me go to commission members then. You have a draft letter. Are there any suggested changes? Any questions around the letter?
The Commissioner Villegas has his hand raised.
Okay, sure. Oscar, go ahead.
Yeah, if there are no questions, I would just ask Leander to thank the senator, and I would move the item that we support the legislation. It's been something we've been talking about for years. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You have a motion, and I'll get public comment. Is there a second? I'll go to public comment.
I'll second Fuller.
Okay, good. So we have a motion and a second. So before we take up any vote on this, I'll go to the public. Morgan, any hands raised?
Can I just say thank you for making my life very easy today?
Good. Well, we haven't voted on it yet, Lillian. Just hold on. So you never
And the no questions thing is always great.
Okay.
That's a win in my book.
Very good. Okay, again, thanks. Morgan, any hands?
I believe I can confirm no questions.
Okay, so Liliana is going to get off the hook here, sounds like. So, okay, with that then, we do have a motion and a second to approve the draft letter as submitted. And if there's nothing further, then we'll go and call for the vote. Morgan, go ahead.
Chair Nottoli,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nguyen,
Yes.
Commissioner Villegas,
Aye.
Commissioner Commissioner Vasquez,
Yes.
Commissioner Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Nakanishi, Commissioner Paroli,
Yes.
Commissioner Slater,
Yes.
Commissioner Agar,
Yes.
Commissioner Eddy,
Abstain.
Commissioner Vogel,
Abstain. Thanks.
and because I do still have a visual on Commissioner Nakanishi, I'll call him one more time. Okay. We have a total of 8 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 2 abstentions.
Motion passes. Motion passes. Morgan, eight sufficient to pass the motion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, very good. Thank you, commission members. Before we call the next item, I'm going to exit the meeting due to my role on the Delta Stewardship Council as it relates to the next item. So Commissioner Nguyen, our vice chair, will take over the meeting from here. And best wishes on St. Patrick's Day. And I thank you very much. And George, good to see you. Take care, and everybody else. And you're in good hands with Vice Chair, now our Chair, Nguyen. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. I'm going to exit the meeting.
Thanks, Don.
You bet. Take care. Okay. Bye.
All right, moving to item 13. Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Nguyen, commission members. Just a little bit of background on the Lookout Slough Tidal Habitat Restoration and Flood Improvement Project. This was a proposed project that Department of Water Resources submitted a Delta Plan certification of consistency to the Delta Stewardship Council in February of 2021. That was subsequently appealed by a number of bodies, and ultimately the Delta Stewardship Council determined in July of 2021 that the project should be remanded to Department of Water Resources, essentially concurring with some of the appeal arguments largely surrounding the recreational use at that project site, and in addition to the best available science for estimating recreation use. At the very end of 2021, on December 30th, Department of Water Resources resubmitted a certification of consistency on this project. That was also appealed, this time by 2 bodies, including one of the original appellants, Liberty Island Access, again, appealing over issues related to recreational use at the project site. On March 24th, that's a week from today, the Delta Stewardship Council will conduct a hearing on this matter. And it's anticipated that by the middle of May 2022, the Stewardship Council will make a final determination on the appeal matters. Let me say that the certification of consistency that was I'll say resubmitted by Department of Water Resources and that was appealed by Liberty Island Access and Solano County Water Agency in January. The council staff has proposed to dismiss the Solano County Water Agency appeal, basically under the argument that those appeal arguments were already addressed in what I'll call round one of Lookout Slough certification, going back to the summer of 2021. The council staff is also recommending to the council that a portion of the Liberty Island Access appeal, and by the way, when I say Liberty Island Access, I'm talking about a group that represents recreational users at the project site, and that is concerned about the recreational impacts of this proposed habitat restoration project. A portion of the Liberty Island Access appeal is proposed to be dismissed by the council staff. They're seeking the council's concurrence in that. But the staff does recommend that the appeal regarding what's called Delta Plan Policy DPP2, which is the Delta Plan policy that calls for respecting local land use as project proponents go about accomplishing the co-equal goals. That is still proposed to proceed on track and to be heard by the council at their hearing next week, and then for the council to ultimately make a determination on that, again, by sometime around the middle of May of this year. The commission staff intend to make comments at the March 24th hearing. We have a role to play in commenting on Delta Plan appeals if we so wish to take advantage of that. What I'm asking today is for the commission to endorse a letter that was included in the meeting packet. There's one addition that I would like to make to that letter, and it has to do with 3 sentences that characterize the memorandum of understanding that has been entered into in late 2021 between Solano County, Department of Water Resources, and California Department of Fish and Wildlife, that talks about efforts that those entities will conduct regarding recreation planning. I think it's important to acknowledge that. It was an oversight on my part that it was not acknowledged in the letter. But I'm also very firm that although that effort holds a lot of promise for addressing recreational impacts, it is just a promise at this point. And I think it would be an error to allow a Delta Plan certification to proceed without addressing issues that are, we believe, clearly raised by the project and in contradiction to Delta Plan Policy DPP2. The letter primarily focuses on the concerns that commission staff raised, and I would add that a majority of the commission endorsed back in the summer of 2021 regarding deficiencies related to recreational use at the project site, specifically problems with that Delta Plan policy I mentioned, DPP2, respecting local land use. And excuse me, and those issues specifically were eliminating access to the Liberty Island Ecological Reserve on the adjoining property, or at least the existing access that occurs, leaving only boat-in access to Liberty Island Ecological Reserve if this proposed project were to proceed as it's currently proposed. Also eliminating 1.3 miles of bank fishing along the stretch of Shag Slough levee that would be breached by this habitat restoration project. And I'd like to be clear with the commission. We support, this commission, I believe, clearly supports habitat restoration, and the commission staff believe that Lookout Slough is a good habitat restoration project. It just inappropriately impacts Delta recreation, which is a unique Delta value that must be protected and enhanced as we accomplish the co-equal goals as California law requires. And it's very important that Delta Plan Policy DPP2 have meaning. That's what is the protection for local interests throughout the Delta. And there will be other local interests relying upon a strong administration of Delta Plan Policy DPP2 in the future. And it's the law. It's the law to protect and enhance the unique Delta values. So the letter is in the meeting packet. I'm sure that there are questions or comments about it. But to be clear, what I'm asking for the commission is to endorse the letter as drafted with the addition of 3 sentences acknowledging the existence of this memorandum of understanding. And further, it would, if there is support for endorsing this letter, my own preference would be that it go out under the vice chair's signature, but it could go out under the executive director's signature, under my signature. Either way, the letter would acknowledge whatever vote might transpire on this, especially if there's a split vote with either opposition or abstentions. So, Mr. Vice Chair, that's the background I wanted to provide on this, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? I don't see any hands up. Nancy?
Thank you, Vice Chair. So the draft letter, it seems to me, the DPC did not appeal, right? So this is a comment letter.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. And in the past, when the Delta Protection Commission has submitted comment letters on this project to the Delta Stewardship Council, the council has noted that the commission's comment letters did not pertain to the issues involved in the appeal, and therefore pretty much dismissed the comment letter. So
no, not quite true. We argued previously that a specific section of the Public Resources Code, which states that the commission can comment on any matter before the Delta Stewardship Council, and if the council finds that our comments are feasible and within the bounds of the Delta plan, that they would accept those comments. The council doesn't believe that that provision of the Public Resources Code applies to appeal hearings relative to the Delta plan. But the council is very clear that the commission has a role. And in fact, we have a standing ability to provide comment on any Delta plan certification of consistency appeal, given our role to advise the Delta Stewardship Council on how best to protect and enhance the unique Delta values.
Thank you.
Now we still have a disagreement with the council staff about the Public Resources Code section. We've argued that, and most recently in comments we've made on proposed changes to the appeal regulations. We'll see how that plays out. But even independent of that, we have a role that we can play if we choose to get involved in these matters.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification, and I do appreciate the commission's role advising the council. the letter, I think, covers a lot of ground, including issues that are not raised in either, by the appellants. And so I question the value to the council of the comment letter. And I don't see the need to send the letter, and I'm anxious to hear from the Department of Water Resources, perhaps address the recreation issues with the Lookout Slough project. Thank you.
Supervisor Mashburn.
Thank you, Supervisor Wynn. I was going to comment under public comment. I'd be happy to do it now if you would like, but I would defer to the commissioners and give them the opportunity to speak first, and then, if possible, speak under the public comment portion. I appreciate the opportunity, though.
Well, you all are the only one that had a hand raised, so that's why I called on you, Mitch.
Okay. Commissioner Vasquez also has his up.
Okay. Well, I figured he'd want to talk anyway, so go ahead, Supervisor Mashburn.
Okay, thank you. So, as the elected representative for all of the lands that we're speaking about today, I have to follow up on your sign that's right behind you, Supervisor Wynn, that says you talk slow, you walk slow, and you don't say too much. I'd just like to say that I'd respectfully ask that your commission not weigh in on this particular subject with this particular letter at this time. My county, myself, Supervisor Vasquez, my staff, we're working with DWR on this issue right now, and to that end, we have an MOU. That's why I would ask what I'm asking. The second piece of that is that I have some issues with specific content within the letter. It references submissions that were made by my staff at a time prior to the initiation of that MOU. And so what is referenced in that letter right now may not necessarily be reflective of where we're at in the process with DWR at this time with regard to working on recreation and some of those things. Secondly, as the guy who's literally out on that levee a couple times a month right now, I can tell you where it speaks to things like no trash on the levee, no impacts to the levee with regard to degradation. When it talks about no fire pits, there's fire pits out there. They're made out of rock. There's fire pits dug in that levee. There's trails on that levee. There was last time I was out there on the far side of that bridge that's referenced in this letter, a homeless encampment. I'm sure many people on this call have seen a homeless encampment and know what the effects of that would be on an environment, especially in a Delta area. So there are issues that are presented in this letter in a fashion that I don't think are representative of that area. And lastly, when we talk about the landowners out there, I'm also in regular contact with them. And the landowners that I have contacted out there are in support of this project. The landowners, in actuality, the ones who have land directly adjacent to the Shag Slough levee and to this area, have asked the supervisors if it would be possible when we do the road abatement there to abate it all the way out at Swan Road, which is almost a mile back from where we're talking about now. And would shut that entire strip down for access. That's what the landowners are requesting. So I have some issues with the content of the letter as it's written right now. I'm appreciative of the commission's willingness to stand up for folks and to be able to access that area. I'm a sportsman, as you know. I access that area. I hunt ducks out there. I fished out there. It's a wonderful, beautiful place, and I think everybody should have some access to it. I don't necessarily think that this letter is going to be representative of how that access is going to take place. I can assure you that our county is working hard towards that. I'm not going to let our residents down or the folks in the Delta down. And I would encourage the staff at the commission to reach out to my office. They do have access to Commissioner Vasquez, but reach out to my office at any time if they want to discuss this, if they want to work through it, if I can help them in any way with the formation of this type of letter as the representative who actually represents that area. I would encourage that. So again, I just ask that at this time, that maybe that letter doesn't go through. So thank you, Vice Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor Mashburn. Commissioner Vasquez, I apologize, but your hand blends with your cabinetry, so I didn't really see it up there. So I know your cabinets aren't yellow, but that's okay. So Commissioner Vasquez.
Neither is his hand.
Well, thank you for letting Mitch go first. And it is his area, just like it was represented by Supervisor Thompson. I think a 3-sentence statement in this letter doesn't really show enough respect to the work that was done by myself and Supervisor Thompson prior to the MOU coming into being in January of 2020, nor does it speak to the work that we're doing with right now Supervisor Mashburn and myself are doing with DWR. Yes, it took a lawsuit for them to come forward and begin these talks, but I can tell you, this is a really good project. It not only does what it wants, what it's supposed to do, which is hopefully increase habitat for smelt, but it also reinforces the levee. There's a double levee that gets put in place that really protects the lands to the west and north. We've worked hard to work on these details. We continue to work with DWR, and all of this holding up this project, all this process of holding up this project really holds up our ability to secure a location and put some recreation that's needed by our communities out on the east side. There is none whatsoever. And the fact that these folks are going out there fishing off the levee, trespassing on private property, doesn't make it official. And Mitch kind of touched on all the issues that go along with a dead end road, as many of us were supervisors that have dead end roads, and particularly at the end of a bridge that's not supposed to be crossed anymore. Those activities that occur out there are not in the best interest of the community, nor in the best interest of the environment. So I'd be very reluctant to support this. I think it goes contrary to what Supervisor Thompson and myself, and now Supervisor Mitchmore and myself are doing with DWR. We have a strong relationship with them. We've worked hard to come to these agreements. And again, we would be enhancing recreation given the opportunity to move forward with the projects we're looking to do with DWR. We don't have anything that's really significant on the east side of the county. And that was part of the discussions we had prior to the coming up with the MOU. We, again, had lengthy discussions, difference of opinions, but I think in the end, this is a project that serves everybody. It serves the environment, serves the community, and the work they did to increase irrigated lands and replacing the agricultural lands that were going to be taken up by this really, I think, was something well received by the community and certainly well received by the Board of Supervisors and so on. And as we continue to have projects, I mean, just look at Little Egbert, which is probably going to come online. We will continue to ask for those things. That is, in simple terms, what's the best, how does it serve Slough County, and what does Slough County get out? I think we'll continue to have that strong relation with DWR. So we sent a letter in this November of 2001. I imagine Mitch and I will work on a stronger letter. It goes to the council itself. So I'll leave it with that.
Question, John, in regards to certainly you and Supervisor Mashburn is working with DWR. Obviously, the Delta Protection Commission has a responsibility in regards to protecting the Delta, as Director Vink has explained. My question is, in the particular letter that has been prepared, is there anything in there that you see that would be appropriate for addressing by the commission in regards to some of the requirements as laid out and Director Vink's presentation?
Well, to me, it just says that nothing's being done for recreation. It's not true. It is. And nobody talked about recreation 2 or 3 years ago. It was in our MOU that when we put that MOU together, that we talked about recreation and the opportunities to work with DWR. Because all of this is being held up, we're not moving forward. We have a location that we're looking at, but everything's on hold right now.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anyone else?
I'd like to say one more thing. I've not had one email from a county resident saying that somehow they've lost their recreational use of that levee or being able to go over across. Most of those emails come from people outside the county. And again, my concern is for my county residents. I want a facility, a public facility that allows them to use the Delta.
Okay.
Not an unofficial site.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Oh, Commissioner Villegas.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I appreciate the opportunity here. So I think, what Eric's trying to do is his job. It's his responsibility to bring these items to our attention as a commission, given the framework of the commission and the responsibility. I've had the opportunity to serve on the Delta Stewardship Council and had certainly more than my fair share of opportunities to sort of discuss and debate the merits of the Delta Plan policy too, with respect to local land use. And on its face, reading the letter, it makes perfectly good sense, given the responsibility that the Delta Protection Commission has. And that's Eric's job, is to bring that to us. What I've heard tonight, though, given what the public testimony and John, you and Mitch, there's nobody more closer to the ground in the responsibility of managing the affairs of this kind of a project than the elected officials who are going to get their butts kicked if they don't do the right thing and don't protect the essential components of their community, and this being one of them, right smack in the middle of the Delta with recreational opportunities. I guess my thought in reading the letter and hearing the testimony is that we might be better suited if we can align our concerns with what the county's concerns are, rather than trying to get ahead of them. And I don't, or maybe that's not the right term, because Eric, like I said, Eric's doing his job, is to align our concerns in a letter that supports each other, rather than us saying one thing and the county saying something completely different. I have no interest in doing that. I would not want that happening if Yolo County had been working on this kind of a project and had to, enter into aspects of threats of litigation and actual litigation and all the messy stuff that comes with this kind of a project. So I guess my alternative request of this commission is that we not send this letter, but that we send a letter that speaks to the requirements of the Delta Plan policy too, because that is our responsibility to comment on those things, but not have them be in, not congruent with what the county's trying to do. And I have all the full faith in the county's ability to navigate their responsibility in that space. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, I'll go back. I would tend to agree with Commissioner Villegas, only from the standpoint that we have, I think, two responsibilities here. Obviously, Eric, you're doing exactly what we've asked you to do in regards to representing the commission and certainly the Delta. And I think, therefore, and looking over not just a letter, but looking at all the documentation after that, there's a lot of information in regards to things that have happened. However, as a supervisor and as Supervisor Villegas talks about, and certainly Supervisor Mashburn and Vasquez, oftentimes, dealing on the ground with some of these issues, and certainly with the residents that are affected, it is important that we act in concert between agencies to make sure that we don't get cross-threaded in regards to our messaging. So, Eric, I'll turn it back to you. Your thoughts? I mean, you've heard both Supervisor Vasquez and Mashburn. What do you think?
Chuck, if I could make one more comment to Oscar's statement.
Go ahead.
I think if the letter reinforced the efforts that we're doing and holding DWR, to that task of putting that recreation in, would supporting our efforts, I think would be a much better letter than us, kind of contradicting each other, although looking for the same thing. This is an opportunity to put some facilities in that don't exist. People are using the road to park and to go down the levee, which is, they're not, essentially trespassing. They're going over a bridge that's been closed off and doing whatever that is that they do. And Mitch mentioned the homeless encampment. But from me, I've been working on this since 2018. Working with the EPI, working with the state, going through all this, working with the landowners. We have landowner meetings been holding since 2015 to talk about the potential impacts from, projects that are going to come forward. But we're at ground zero. We're at the right elevation for a lot of habitat restoration. Slough County is, and we know that. So whatever efforts that the Delta Protection Commission could help us with, like this kind of effort, would be really, really wanted and supported. I don't think we have to contradict each other, but again, 3 sentences in this letter doesn't do service to the work that Slough County's been doing with the DWR. It didn't show up the first time, and now it wants to be introduced. I just think it somewhat angers me. It says it doesn't give much credit to the work we've done.
Supervisor Mashburn?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Just Vice Chair, sir. In support of what Supervisor Vasquez says, I would fully support a letter that reinforced the position that Solano's taking now, and I would absolutely put my staff and myself at the disposal of your director to help with the composition of that letter, to help him put that together and get him in touch with some of those landowners or them in touch with some of those landowners. I'm appreciative of the commission's efforts and his efforts to assure that, again, like I said before, all our residents on the Delta have some access to recreation. And I think we can all work together to do that. And I would absolutely be in support of that.
Okay, thank you. Erik, comments?
Yeah, well, thank you for all the commenters, commission members, Supervisor Mashburn. I guess a couple of thoughts I want to put out there. The first is that, I just think it's really unfortunate that we're even having this discussion this evening, because this project was turned back to DWR this summer, specifically over deficiencies relating to recreational use. And instead of making a serious effort to attempt to rectify that, which, with all respect to Commissioner Vasquez and Supervisor Mashburn, they could rectify it elsewhere. They could say, we're providing recreational opportunities at another location. But rather than do that, we get essentially the same resubmitted certification of consistency in relation to these issues. They did conduct a survey, which was very late. And by the way, a survey that indicated that there was as much, if not as much, even more recreational use out there than had been estimated by one of the appellants, Liberty Island Access. But aside from the survey, that's it. No other SOPs, no other concessions, no other indications. Opening up a boat ramp that's designed for agency boats and making it available for people with personal watercraft, that's great. That helps, that helps the personal watercraft recreational use. It doesn't do anything for other recreational users whose recreational access is severely constrained. And I have great respect for the memorandum of understanding. I hope it is a very successful and fruitful memorandum of understanding, but it's a promise at this point. And I'm sorry, Department of Water Resources doesn't always deliver where they say they will deliver. I hope this is a contrary to that. I hope Solano County is able to hold their feet to the fire and ensure that there will be recreational improvements as there are further habitat restoration projects occurring in Solano County. I wouldn't be surprised if we are having this same discussion in relation to future habitat restorations. You know, the Delta plan has to mean something. It has to mean something about how proposed projects affect the unique Delta values. Our only recourse on the environmental review would have been to sue DWR over the EIR. We didn't do that, but we have this opportunity at the Delta plan, which thankfully is giving greater consideration than DWR did through the environmental review process to these potential recreational impacts. So I would still urge the commission members, with incredible respect to the two county supervisors from Solano County, I would still urge the commission to endorse this letter and support the comments. Mitigation and replacing the lost recreational opportunities can occur in a number of different ways. It doesn't have to be at the project site, but we've gotten nothing. Nothing from the project proponent, DWR, to attempt to mitigate for these lost recreational impacts.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Any other comments from any commissioners? Any comments from the public?
I see Commissioner Vasquez and Commissioner Vogel both have their hands raised.
Commissioner Vogel.
Actually, Commissioner Vasquez had his hand up first.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry. I can only say for myself that I'm committed to continuing to work to advance those recreation opportunities in the Delta. If my health holds up, I don't have anybody running against me, so I'll be around for another 4 years and 8 months. So somebody will have to deal with me.
All right, Commissioner Vogel.
Thank you. I'd appreciate if you'd indulge me to hear very briefly from the Department of Water Resources about the recreational benefits of the project and the accommodations that they've made. I just think that it would be important for folks to have more facts.
Okay. Anybody from DWR?
Yeah. Chris Turnell's here.
Okay.
I think that's me.
All
Vice
right.
Chair, yeah, good evening. Vice Chair Wynn, members of the Commission, Christopher Turnell, Deputy Director for Integrated Watershed Management, the California Department of Water Resources. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity just to say a few things. A lot was just put out on the table. Not quite sure where to jump in, but I think what stood out probably the most to me from Mr. Vink's comments were a couple of things really, but one was a comment that's just flat false. And that is the insinuation that every project must result in the enhancement of Delta recreation. That is not, in fact, the law. The law is, and the thrust of the law is, that all of these projects together, the partnerships that we build along the way, all need to secure water supply, restore the Delta habitat, and secure a strong future for Delta as a place that includes recreation. They, as a sum total, need to be moving forward in that direction, but that burden cannot be borne on the back of every individual project. And therefore, that is why in the Delta Reform Act, and this is what the Delta Stewardship Council holds us accountable to, it is the standard that we need to do everything we can feasibly to address recreation among other public values at these restoration sites and other project sites in the Delta. And that is precisely what we have done. I just want to give you a little bit of flavor about the challenge of doing that on this particular site. This is not a black and white issue. This is not about DWR abdicating its responsibility to do the right thing. This is not a black and white issue whatsoever. few things come to mind. Regulatory permitting from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We have to get multiple permits, conservation easements, other regulatory documents from them that explicitly, by definition, as is common practice for those permitting processes, do not allow for much recreation at all, if at all. Pulled from a different direction, we have local agency concerns. The two county supervisors spoke to it beautifully, far better than I could. But we're listening to them. They have long-standing concerns, not related to this project, but related to public access and impacts that you heard that I don't need to repeat. So again, a tension in a different direction. And a third tension is recreation interest. The central pillar of the Newsom administration is increased public access to our natural resources. We take that incredibly seriously, and we took that incredibly seriously here. And so with all those different tensions in different directions, what did we actually end up with? Well, contrary to what you heard from your staff, we actually are improving the situation out there. For example, the project turns a 3,000 acre, currently completely inaccessible terrestrial piece of land into 20 miles of publicly accessible navigable waterways for kayaking, fishing, hunting, bird watching, and more. 20 miles. We're installing a publicly accessible non-motorized boat launch where there isn't anything like that out there today, publicly accessible. And we're installing a large emergency vehicle and agricultural truck turnaround facility to improve access and maneuverability for sheriffs, for wardens, for other law enforcement, as well as for adjacent landowners. Again, that's something that's not out there today. And what's important, the reason why I mentioned this in the context, this last item in the context of recreation, is that what this large turnaround facility allows for is an informal area within the formal public right-of-way that can accommodate about 35 vehicles, which is roughly the maximum number of vehicles that our surveys found out there on any given day of the week. And that's not all. And this gets to a degree of alignment with your executive officer. And that is the Delta deserves better in general. Irrespective of this project, we always have to be looking at what comes next and how we can work together, building on these trust-based relationships to do more for recreation in the Delta. And that is precisely why we and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and Solano County, not exactly three entities who always have seen eye to eye, have entered into a strong memorandum of understanding that commits us, yes, commits us to work together to create a very inclusive, completely inclusive, and fully facilitated by third-party facilitators process. Come one, come all, recreationists, hunters, fishermen and women, landowners, near and far, state agencies, local agencies, federal agencies, all are invited to the table to come up with commonly identified opportunities for recreational enhancement in this very neighborhood in the Delta. We really hope the Delta Protection Commission will play a strong role in that. We think the commission has a lot to offer that conversation. And it's the combination, if I can leave you with anything, it's the combination of what we are actually doing on the project, despite what you heard, and this longer term vision that's happening now. Agreements have been signed. We are in contract with those facilitation agencies. We are moving this MOU process forward. This is not fake, this is real. And just like Supervisor Vasquez will be around for a while, I certainly hope to be too, and certainly DWR will be, and so will Commissioner Vogel's Resources Agency be. So continue to hold us to the fire. We are committed, we are here, and we think that together we're making a better Delta, including with this project. So I'll leave my comments there. Really appreciate the discussion and discourse and the willingness to hear my comments on that tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Chernow, just a quick question. Have you been involved with Supervisors Mashburn and Vasquez in their discussions with DWR?
Well, they were signatories to the memorandum of understanding, and we've been in contact throughout, for the past number of years, ever since they brought litigation against us originally, and that started a conversation, and we've certainly been in contact.
Okay, so and the reason I raised the question is because obviously those who've been participating with Solano County obviously have a very clear understanding of what the concerns are, or at least maybe the goals are. So have you, or are you, because there are those who are for lack of a better term, in headquarters, there are those who are out there, representing DWR in the field, so to speak. I'm just trying to get a perspective. Are your comments tied to personal contact with the supervisors, or is this information you gathered through the project itself?
Well, Department of Water Resources is, I appreciate that question. Department of Water Resources is the project proponent. So we are the CEQA lead agency. So frankly, no diminishment of anyone else, but nobody knows the project better than DWR and our contractors. And we have been certainly, given that this project lies squarely within the bounds and jurisdiction of Solano County, we have been darn sure to work closely with the supervisors along the way. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Any other comments? Supervisor Mashburn.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out there, I've had DWR and Chris standing on that levee with me looking at stuff and talking about things. And also Fish and Wildlife as well. They've been really good about when I ask, coming out and talking. And I'm a see it, touch it, feel it kind of guy. I want to be standing there when they explain something to me so I can see it firsthand. And I want them to hear from me firsthand and see firsthand what I'm talking about. And they've been very participative in that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Vasquez.
Yeah, thank you. To that point, I think it was at least 6 years ago that Chris and I actually toured that area in a county van. So yes, over the last 6 or 7 years, we've had a lot of discussion about that. I know where the quiet room is in DWR. It's right across the cubicle from David Akita, who used to work for us. So yes, there's been lots of interaction and lots of discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the commission? I don't see any hands up. Oh,
Supervisor Villegas has his hand up.
I just saw him. It's interesting because on the screen, you all move around, so you don't stay in one place. So Commissioner Villegas.
That's how we stay alive as elected officials. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So, I think we beat this up pretty good. I want to thank Eric for doing what I know he in his heart he believes is his responsibility, and I have no doubt. I would just maybe a slight twist on what he's trying to do and what I think. And I have no doubt that Mitch was out there with his 10-gallon hat with DWR staff trying to figure out how to make this pencil. So I would provide maybe an alternative motion that we direct staff to work with the county to find common threads that reach common goals in this space of responsibility that the department, or the Delta Protection Commission has as it relates to DPP2. And I think that's the right thing to do, and support the county and get there. And as Chris said, hold the respective regulatory and control agencies responsible. And but I think maybe this doesn't get there the way some might want, but I think it gets there, at least for me. So I would offer that as an alternative motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Anyone want to make a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Vasquez, in a second. Any comments before we take a vote? Okay, so yes, Commissioner Eddy.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And so just to clarify on that motion, that letter will come back to the commission for approval?
I don't think there'll be time for that.
Yeah.
I think the meeting is on the 24th.
No, 24th.
Right. I mean, Eric, I guess I would pose the question to you. I guess if there was some modification, you could send it to the commissioners just for their review, for clarification.
Well, maybe it will require Commissioner Villegas restating the motion. I think what I got from that was directing staff to work with Solano County. Is it related to the MOU? I wasn't quite sure. After that, I didn't quite follow the thread of the idea.
Commissioner Villegas?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm hoping to do is to find a way to identify where those areas are that we have common interest with the county and frame our letter in support of the county's efforts to identify areas that we can find common interest in. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to, I guess I don't have any desire to overstep or to get out ahead of the county and say things that are not in support of what the county is trying to do. So I would defer to the county in large part, let them identify things that they need support for, and then we'll support them in that way. I mean, I think that would be my suggestion.
So if I could.
Yeah, I don't see that related to the Delta Stewardship Council appeal matter. It seems to stand outside of that, but maybe I'm still not understanding the thrust of the motion there.
Oscar,
I mean, I have no problem working with the MOU parties. We've asked to be included, and so that would be great. It would be great for the commission to be involved in that effort moving forward. But I'm still not quite understanding if there's something in that motion that relates to the matter before the Stewardship Council.
And Eric, you're talking in regards to the hearing on 24th, as far as the I guess the remanding and the appeal. Is that correct?
Yeah, and to be clear, the Stewardship Council is holding a hearing on March 24th, and then within 2 months of that hearing, they will meet again and consider a draft staff determination regarding the appeal. You know, whether to deny the appeal, whether to, I'm not sure what the exact wording is, but basically whether to accept the appeal and remand the matter back to the applicant, which in this case is DWR, but that would occur sometime in May. Next week's hearing is just an opportunity for appellants and of course the commission, giving our standing role in these matters if we elect to take part in them, to provide comments to the Stewardship Council, as well as the public to provide comments as well. So
this would be the only opportunity where we could actually submit comments from the commission.
Well, certainly I mean, this is when the council would like the comments. Let me put it that way, because following the hearing next week, the council staff are going to start working on their staff draft determination. And I'm not sure exactly when they close the door on, you know, I think they're going to close the door after the hearing next week. They'll conclude the hearing and they'll say, okay, that was the opportunity for people to provide comment orally or for people to submit written comments. So
okay,
that's my understanding of their process, Vice Chair Wynn.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fuller.
Yes, call for the question.
All right.
That takes precedence.
All right.
Call for the question.
All right. So hearing that, could we have the roll call, please? Does everybody understand the motion?
This is Supervisor Vasquez. I don't think we can get to it here. I know what Oscar's doing.
Okay.
In a bigger sense.
The question is out and we're an hour and 5 minutes over. If we can go ahead and call.
Okay.
Okay, so procedurally, I'm not sure, but I'm going to withdraw my motion then. If we can't, if it's not, it doesn't appear that we'll get there, I'll just withdraw my motion then.
I'll withdraw my second.
Okay. All right. Based upon the staff report and the recommendation, this was to support a letter from the commission in regards to Delta Stewardship Council. So having addressed that and having the call for the motion, is anybody willing to make a motion in regards to support this letter?
I would so move. Fuller.
Commissioner Fuller. We have a second. I don't see any hands up. So absent a second, then the motion dies. Okay, so that closes discussion. I want to thank everybody for their input. I understand where everybody is doing their job, and I certainly appreciate your comments. So that's where it stands. Any final comments before we adjourn?
Thank you for the opportunity to work with you. Even as we go now.
Commissioner Fuller, I appreciate your comments. And because of the lateness, I missed one dinner and one MAC meeting. So that's fine. So again, thank you all. So seeing no comments, I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. I want to thank all of you for participating. I understand you're all busy. And
Mr. Vice Chair, just real quickly to prime commissioners, we're likely to meet in person on May 19th. That's certainly the hope. And I'll reach out to you or your schedulers about a start time. We've been starting these meetings at 4 p.m. It might be wise to continue with a 4 p.m. start, even if it's in person. So more to come, but I just want you to start thinking about that as we move toward a May 19th meeting. Of course, you know, whatever happens with COVID might take us in a different direction, but at this point, we're going to plan to do it in person.
And Eric, that may be a longer meeting, right? Is that correct?
I suspect it might. I'll certainly do my best to not include a lot of other agenda items so that the main focus can be on the executive director interviews.
And one last question. Do you have a location of where we're going to hold it?
We don't know that yet. My recommendation would be either a hotel in Stockton or West Sacramento, and that will be part of the communication in reaching out to commissioners and scheduling assistants.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Any other final comments? If not, we will adjourn. Thank you all for your attendance. See you next time.